Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wherever you are in the world right now, I hope you are well, you are safe, and you're taking care of yourself and everyone around you. Happy International Youth Day. Myself and my team are very excited to be organizing a fully virtual youth-led innovation festival on this International Youth Day to celebrate all the revolutionary ways that young people are driving meaningful change. So welcome to the United Nations first ever Youth-led Innovation Festival. Over the next 2 days, over 6,000 young people will join us online, and they will hear from more than 65 diverse speakers to discuss the importance of innovation and technology to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and support COVID-19 recovery efforts. We will bring together young innovators and solution makers with the United Nations, policymakers, civil society leaders, and tech industry leaders for timely conversations on shaping a solutions-oriented future. We have a number of multi-stakeholder sessions lined up focusing on 6 thematic areas. We have spotlight sessions and so many activities and workshops and talks for you to learn and share your experiences. We want this festival to be a safe and empowering space for young people in all their diversity, and we want it to be a platform to amplify the work, especially of young women and girls, young people from developing countries, young people from small islands and LDCs, LGBTIQ young people, indigenous young people, young migrants, young refugees, and stateless youth, and young people with disabilities. We also acknowledge that not every young person who wants to be here can be here today because of lack of access to internet and technology in many parts of the world, but we will continue to advocate on their behalf and work to make sure that their voices, their challenges, and their ideas are taken into account in all steps of the work we do to promote youth-led innovation. Ever since I was appointed as the UN Secretary General's envoy, I've been in awe of how resilient young people are in finding creative solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing our world, from tackling climate change to fighting gender inequality to achieving lasting peace around the world. There's no shortage of youth-led solutions. All we need to do is to provide the spaces and opportunities for these innovations to grow and prosper. It's time for youth to be raising our voices and sharing ideas for a better world. Let's keep showing the world the magnitude of youth power and youth potential. Now, without further ado, let me pass the floor to our amazing host today, Dustin Liu. Dustin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Yathma, for those opening words and your leadership in uplifting youth voices. Let me reiterate warm greetings to you all. Welcome to our Youth Lead Innovation Festival. My name is Dustin Liu. I use he, his pronouns. I'm calling in from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am so grateful to be your host for day one of the Youth Lead Innovation Festival. I want to underscore that this is our first ever Youth Lead Innovation Festival. And today we will be exploring, as Yathma mentioned, the crucial role that young people play as solution makers and change makers. During my time as the UNA USA Youth Observer to the United Nations, I have found it abundantly clear that young people need to be centered because they bring the creativity, the innovation, and the spirit of imagination that we need to meet our world's toughest challenges. And it is mission critical for the world to support young innovators and change makers, especially those most proximal to these issues who identify with marginalized and vulnerable communities. On this first day of the summit, we will have an opportunity to explore 3 main thematic discussion areas, starting with health and well-being, followed by climate action and biodiversity, and ending the day with economic empowerment and employment, topics that I'm sure we can agree are incredibly important to young people. Throughout the session today, we will be hearing from young innovators who will share with us their solutions, as well as invite multi-stakeholder discussions between youth, industry, leaders, and policymakers. And it is only when we bridge these silos that we'll be able to catalyze the impact that is possible. And even if we are not able to see all of your beautiful faces on screen, we want to hear from you. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we do have the chat function open, and we're going to encourage you to go ahead and share with us your solutions in the chat. We want to know who you are, where you're tuning in from, and we want to know the work that you are creating to address the challenges that we face in this world and in your communities. Go ahead and use that chat function. We'll be surfacing some of the ideas that we're seeing in the chat later in our session. And if you are following along on social media, feel free to use at UN Youth Envoy as a tag and use the hashtag #YouthLead, and we'll be sure to flag those as well. If you are following along on social media, we invite you to draw attention to our official Youth Lead correspondents. They will be sharing their take on each session, and we encourage you to stay tuned to their live commentary and be sure to share your thoughts on their posts as well. Additionally, we have sign language interpreters who will be joining us through the event. And don't forget that if you're joining from the Zoom webinar, you can always turn on the closed caption option by clicking the closed caption button in the menu below. Now, without further ado, let's get started with our first session, Health and Wellbeing, and welcome Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the WHO, who will open our Health and Wellbeing session with a keynote speech. Dr. Ghebreyesus, over to you.
Dear colleagues, students, and friends, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of us, our loved ones, our communities, and our shared humanity. Your voice and engagement are needed more than ever as the world responds to this unprecedented crisis. You don't have to wear a uniform, call yourselves activists, or get elected to participate. You just have to be brave enough to care. Start by being a better listener, a better friend, a better neighbor. Get to know the people in your communities. Caring can make this world a better place. Start conversations about issues facing young people and society, such as mental health, domestic violence, alcohol, drug use, and education. The only way we can take on the global crisis of the future is by working together in solidarity. Whether we're facing pandemics, climate change, or whatever tomorrow may bring, dare to be a part of the solutions. You may not have the power to change the world, but you can change someone's life. And that's how change starts. WHO is committed to engaging with youth, including through our Youth Council and Youth Hub, as well as by partnering with youth organizations to support the global youth mobilization effort. More than ever, the world needs the ideas, the energy, and the leadership of young people to build a healthier, safer, and fairer future. The future is yours, and you have to shape it. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghebreyesus, for those opening remarks. We want to take a moment to update you on the best way that you can engage with us in this Zoom webinar space, and that's using the Q&A feature. Feel free to use the Q&A feature to make comments, to ask questions, and also share your thoughts throughout today's session. And without further ado, as promised, we now have 3 young innovators who will share their work with us. These young innovators are working on solutions on this track, health and well-being. And first, I'd like to welcome our first presenter, Trisha Swami from Mental Health Hats, to present our first solution presentation. Trisha, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trisha, and I'm the leader of Mental Health Hats. In the month of October, year 2020, 4 high school students, including myself, came together virtually during Kids Hack the Crisis Hackathon and created a solution addressing mental health. The hackathon was organized by the Swedish Institute and UNICEF Sweden. The Mental Health Hats team is immensely grateful to UNICEF Sweden for their encouragement and the organizers of the Youth Lead Innovation Festival for this opportunity. Mental Health Hats is a website, but our team prefers the term Mental Health Support Platform. The foundation idea is to provide free mental health care services through the features on the Mental Health Support Platform. Some of them include an information and updates feature, which will provide articles, tips, and tricks to curb mental health problems, webinars, programs, and activities about self-care and self-love, recorded instructions about meditation and other remedies to reduce stress, the Buddies program, where a group of children will be introduced to a mentor or an expert, forming a virtual support circle. Partner with Us feature, under which university students majoring in the related fields of mental health can conduct activities, webinars, and Zoom sessions. Also, mental health care service centers can advertise their services on our website. Besides, representatives from clinics, hospitals, and other organizations can help educate about maintaining a positive mental health. Presently, the Mental Health Hat solution is a Wix website that has about 10 features listed on it. The website is inactive, and our team has not further worked on the solution after the hackathon ended. Our team believes that health, especially mental health, is a popular concern in today's scenario. One of our team members had some personal experience with mental health illness in the past. That is why she understands how hard it could be to struggle with mental health problems. We hope to destigmatize mental health problems in the society and support positive mental health. We hope our solution, Mental Health Hats, contributes to the Sustainable Development Goal 3. The Mental Health Hats team hopes the mental health support platform can help everyone in some way. Everyone has the right to mental health. Our team read a quote by Professor Noam Spencer. Mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. We hope that our mental health support platform helps in that process. Help improve, heal, support the health of mind is the slogan of the Mental Health Hats team and solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trisha. Mental health is not a destination, but a process is certainly something that I am resonating with and stay with me. Thank you for sharing your story, because I think it demonstrates what happens when we give young people the tools, the resources, and also the agency to become innovators. Young people hold expertise and are experts with their own experience. And it's really important that we leverage that expertise to put proximal solutions forward. At this point, I'm very excited to introduce our next presentation. I'd like to welcome Nerlena Doka from Walini. Nerlela, passing over the virtual mic to you.
Okay, sorry. Hi guys, my name is Nerlela. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Yala province in deep south of Thailand. I'm speaking on behalf of my team Alim, and we are 3 female of a group in a group and become teachers. We study about teachers. And we interest to solve about bullying. Yes, nowadays we have seen that bullying rising not only in Thailand, right? But around of the world. Where we are from, people have long suffered from years of unrest. This we believe has the effect of creating more violence within families and among children. Sadly, today there are more and more about bullying among primary school age children and teens. So make me and our team interest about this and need to improve or need to solve about this problem. Yes, for our main goals is to develop solution for addressing from form of bullying, and we're focusing on primary school children aged 2 to 12 years old. Last year, we joined the Generation Unlimited Youth Challenge, and we developed about board game dawn to make the players or make the children understand about bullying. What is bullying? Why we cannot bully each other, or why it's not good? Yes, and also and how to handle bullying in a peaceful manner. Yes, for our solution is in effect relevant to several SDGs, namely SDG 3 about health and well-being, and SDG 4 about education. Yes, we also believe that our solution will help contribute towards the goals of leaving no one behind, as bullying can result in child not being able to continue his or her education, or not being able to enjoy good quality, as the experience could be very limiting. Yes, and we strongly feel that this should not happen to everyone, and that every child deserves to be able to learn about this and learn together, live together, enjoy with their society. Yes, and at present we are currently working with teachers school, target school, to develop a module on willing to be used to their school. First to this, had conducted further testing of our board game, and further research with school and university teachers, physiologists, social workers, and civic society organization on effective method for addressing the problem of bullying in children. And moving forward, we plan to develop sustainable business model, and which will help us generate income who able to help our society at the same time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nurlela. I think what you've raised for us is the intersections of these issues, how we can't talk about health and well-being without talking about the SDGs like quality education. Thank you for noticing these gaps in your communities and putting forward a solution that matters. Now we have our last presenter, encouraging all of our attendees to react in the Q&A feature, really hoping to hear your voices both in this Zoom space and also on social media. For our last presenter, we have Yolani Johnson to share about their solution to support the health and well-being in their communities. Passing the virtual floor over to you, Yolani.
Thank you, Dustin. Greeting to you all. My name is Yolani Johnson. I'm representing UT Youth and Health. I'm the Deputy Director for the Teen Pregnancy in the Marshall Islands. Being part of the project, we implement in 3 largest urban areas in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. We've been in the community program for more than 3 decades. We deal with issues that we face in the community, just as sex issues, gender-based violence, school truancy, suicide, and substance abuse. They are something that we really enjoy working with. Another reason we enjoy this program is how we work with the public places, just as the school, the communities, and the government. Also, the challenges that goes along with it. Somehow, it is a great opportunity to connect with other people, not just to teach them, but also to learn what is new. Our office is dedicated to young people throughout the Marshall Islands. We promote health, culture, and spiritual well-being through training, outreaches, collaboration, respect, and pride. Our ultimate goal is behavior change for a better quality of life. We also provide safe and supportive environment for clients where they can learn about and discuss issues that affect their life. Also providing inclusivity to the LGBTQI plus community. Youth to Youth use drama, skit, song, music, dance, promote via radio program, video protection, and school, outer island, community outreach, innovative to engage Marshallese, young youth, and spread in masses in a creative, entertaining manner. This novel approach to health education has ensured that success of program in delivering an effectiveness program targeted at Marshallese youth. However, after COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, all activities were held. Dissemination information became an issue to COVID-19. And after the Ministry of Health and Human Services strongly advised the community to practice social distancing, even when all the RMI is coronavirus free. Practicing social distancing was a must. Almost every store and public places has their floor level, indicating where to sit or where to stand. We also faced with challenges. We were unable to reach our targeted audience due to physical distancing, and we had to stop school activity and gathering until public school system allow us to continue. Our solution for that was we increased our online presence with social media. We came up with an idea to test the analysis of the adolescent age 13 to 23 group on the Majuro, Ibay, and Outer Island. Within material dissemination and support innovative way to reach a wider youth audience. Example, weekly journal ad and weekly social posts that reach RMI population and island community on COVID-19 awareness and other issues that Marshall Islands are facing. Another limitation we continue to experience is due to cultural barriers. We have to separate boys and girls when talking about reproductive health. For youth to overcome this issue, we still follow cultural advice. On the other hand, remain the adult and youth about why the educational aspect is important, and that starting to slowly discuss these issues at home can also bring the parents and youth to a mutual understanding on way to prevent pregnancy and HIV STI. Whenever the chance come up, whether at school, public places, or at community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolani. I just want to take a moment to express gratitude for the energy your organization placed into innovating new ways of being during the COVID-19 context. I think I can speak for all of us when we appreciate your leadership and the work your organization has in centering youth voices in a culturally responsive way. And with that, we have ended the presentations from Young Innovators. And in just a moment, I will be joined by experts in the room. Today, we are also joined by experts in the room that will share some reflections on the presented solutions. So first, congratulations to all the presenters, and thank you for the amazing work that you are leading. I want to take a moment to unpack that our experts for today are not necessarily those who are in more senior positions or those who hold institutional legitimacy. We recognize and understand that young people are equal partners, and to disrupt this notion that age is a significant barrier to expertise. So excited to have a diverse set of experts here with us today. Without further ado, let us first welcome Emily Williams to the stage. Emily Williams is a Canadian studying international human rights law at the National University of Ireland, Galway. Her research interests include sexual and reproductive rights, climate justice, and corporate social responsibility. She is currently a GYM Local Solutions Youth Panelist representing World YMCA. And we are so excited to have you here, Emily. Looking forward to hearing your remarks. Over to you.
Thank you, Dustin, for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Like Dustin said, my name is Emily Williams. I am from Canada, and I use she, her pronouns. I am very honored to speak here today, and I will speak briefly on each of the solutions presented. First, the game Dawn is an excellent idea to combat bullying as a form of violence. The team Mualim took a widely recognized board game, Snakes and Ladders, to make it easy to play and understand. I particularly appreciate that they use real-life examples so children can easily see how these situations are defined as bullying and how they can stop them in their personal lives. To expand your reach globally, I would suggest researching different software options to make this game virtual. If so, you could add examples of cyberbullying, as the COVID-19 pandemic has led to an increased risk of cyberbullying online as our lives move increasingly online. I study and work in the field of international human rights law, so naturally, one of my first thoughts about this project was that it helps further many rights under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, including Article 6, the right to life, survival, and development of the child, Article 19, protection against all forms of violence, and Article 31, the right to play. Overall, Team Mualim is a great example of young leaders coming together to create an innovative solution to a local problem. Well done, and congratulations on your hard-earned success. Second, Mental Health Hats is a timely and much needed service. What stood out to me most about this project was how your support platform is addressing many aspects of mental health care. You are providing information sharing and awareness on mental health issues, mentorship and support circles, and emergency services for young people. Therefore, this approach will be sustainable, as it is not a band-aid solution, but a proactive one. Not only are you helping young people access mental health care, you are also providing opportunities to young students and professionals working and studying in the field. Your project takes a human rights-based approach and helps fulfill the right to the highest attainable standard of mental health, which has been recognized under multiple regional and international human rights treaties. I also want to highlight the importance that this is a free service. This helps ensure accessibility of the service and that everyone who needs mental health care is able to receive it. To expand your reach, I would suggest reaching out to other mental health advocates globally to see if you could partner with them to bring your project to other areas of the world. As well, to continue growing your platform, I highly encourage you to please apply to the local solutions funding offered by the Global Youth Mobilization. Applicants can receive up to $5,000 to continue growing and implementing their projects. Last, but certainly not least, the Republic of Marshall Islands Teen Pregnancy Prevention Project is an innovative and comprehensive approach to sex education and advancing sexual and reproductive health rights. I particularly appreciate how it takes a proactive approach and works with multiple partners in the community to advance a well-rounded strategy. Using radio allows youth who live in the outer islands and rural areas to receive the information in an accessible manner. Presenting the information in different ways, such as through dance, skits, and drama performances, allows students with all learning styles to receive the information and learn about it in a fun and creative way. Your work also helps achieve different rights under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, including the right to health, developing guidance for family planning education, and the right to an adequate standard of living. I agree with your proposed solution to increase your online presence. This will help increase accessibility of information and allow youth to have the information they need to make informed decisions about their health. Overall, each of these projects are incredibly well done and help advance the 2030 Sustainable Agenda, including goals 3, good health and well-being, 4, quality education, 5, gender equality, and 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, as well as incorporating the principle of leaving no one behind. Best of luck with all of your projects' continued work, and I can't wait to see what you all do in the future. Thank you.
Emily, thank you so much for those remarks. I appreciate the way that you've connected at your end, your ending remarks, the ways in which these youth innovations are actually connected to a multitude of SDGs and focused on this idea of leaving no one behind. At this point, we're excited to welcome Brian Desmond-Cott to the virtual stage as one of our experts. Brian is the Youth Innovation Portfolio Manager at UNICEF. In his work at UNICEF, he focuses on the practical application of human-centered design, as well as co-designing with young people, the creation of sustainable and scalable programs. Certainly a relevant idea to our session today. Brian, looking forward to your thoughts, passing the virtual stage over to you.
Thanks, Dustin, and hello, everyone, and thank you to the teams that presented tonight. I just want to say in no particular order that I really loved all of your presentations. And as Team William from Thailand knows, I'm part of the Youth Challenge myself. I've been the program manager for that program. And through that, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of youth ideas around different topics over the last few years. And they're always very inspirational to me. So again, in no particular order, what I would like to say first to Team William is I'm really excited to see your progress. I've known about you for a number of months. I've seen you from the idea form in the boot camp, and I've also seen how you've adapted and worked with the challenges that faced you throughout these months, this year. And it's been really, really inspirational from my side. I love the board game approach. I think that there's something really special about games and gaming that can be really, really positive. If there's something that games do really well, it gives you a way of leveling up your knowledge, leveling up your capacities. And if you can tap into that leveling up, you can do a lot, right? You can be engaged. You can engage young people. And you know what? That's really good in school, out of school, at home. It can adapt anywhere. And that's amazing, right? The second thing is, I know that you've been working with a network of teachers. I think the network of teachers is one of your biggest assets. How can you work further with them? They spend a lot of time with young people like yourselves, with children, and they have a different perspective than you might. So how do you tap into their knowledge and bring them in with you and take them with you on the journey? That is one way of bringing your game to the next level with those who are seeking for a solution as well, but maybe don't have the same perspective as you might. The third thing I really wanted to share for you is, how are you distributing the game? How are you getting it out there? This is something that you really need to figure out. Because if you can figure out how to distribute your game, how to get it out further, not just within the teachers network, not just in Thailand, but beyond, then you can really do a lot more impact than just in your local neighborhood. Well, all of those things are important. That distribution question is always one of the biggest ones for any social impact business, for any business in general. So how do you solve that one? The next theme I would like to address is the mental health hacks. I think the thing that really struck me most from your presentation was the idea of mental health as a process, that we're all going through this process, young, old alike. And I think that that's a key thing that we should consider. You talked a lot about your process and your platform. And one thing that I know is that there are a lot of platforms out there in the world. There's platforms that many of us, we don't know all of them, we don't know many of them, but they are there. So the question is, how can you cooperate with other platforms and focus in on the issues that you want to solve the most? Are you in this business, this idea, this initiative for the platform, for the website, or are you in it for that mental health process? If you're in it for the process, how do you really leverage other platforms, other partners to help you reach as many young people as possible? And the second thing about the process is, as we all know, we join and we leave networks, we join and we leave kind of activities. So how easy can you make it for young people to come back into your network? If they do fall off, if they do disappear for a little while and they come back and want more help, how can you make it easy for them to come back in? I think that would be one really big key for you. And finally, but of course, not last but not least, youth and health. You've just demonstrated a lot of resilience in your presentation, facing these challenges and really working on something that is so worthwhile. Shifting your focus and shifting when things move so much this year, I think that's really valuable. So really, congratulations to you on doing that. One thing I want to pick up on is the pandemic has really taken from so many young people the ability to connect with others, to feel like they're in the room with others. And from what you've told me, your office was one of those spaces where people could be safe and they could connect and they could share. My question to you, my challenge to you is, what are you doing now to recreate that feeling of that office, that safe space, that community where young people can communicate with others, share their voice, share their, their body language with others about, not just what I can text, not just listening, not just posting on social media, but really making a human connection. That's something I think you have a real opportunity to make a difference with. And also, if you can recreate that safe space, that conversation space, The young people can actually bring you into their home with them. Whereas maybe their home couldn't come into your office, now you can go with them. And I think that's a real opportunity to create something. And for all the teams and all of the young people listening, I encourage all of you to find this challenge that really inspires you and take action. Take action, do something. Because taking action really leads to learning what you can do and what you still need to learn how to do. It also introduces you to people who can help you along your way and that you can help along the way. All of those things to me come from action, and I encourage you to take that action. So good luck, take care, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Dustin. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, Emily and Brian, for those really wonderful reflections. Brian, I just want to highlight what you raised about the importance of intergenerational partnerships, partnering with teachers to expand impact. And I also appreciated your thoughts on how community is such a critical piece to promoting agency and creativity in young people. And believe it or not, we are coming to the end of our solution segment. It was just so wonderful to hear from the young innovators and the experts just now. I also see that young people in the audience are engaging us on social media. So wanted to take a moment to highlight some of the reactions coming here. Omnia is saying, as a young person, this topic is important for me because human health and the health of the planet are integral for youth to shape a sustainable and prospering future. Absolutely. Wanted to go ahead and also highlight this initiative from Sanchita, a 25-year-old who is managing a global community of language learners. Glad to listen to all the young innovators. Glad to have you in this space with us as well. I also want to raise that we've been getting a lot of questions in the chat and wanted to acknowledge that we want your active participation throughout today's session. There are questions around how mental health, well-being, therapy access is not affordable and achievable for numerous people. How do we make that attainable? I see another question around substance abuse as a major issue, as a barrier to education access. And what are ways in which we can reduce the rate of substance abuse from our youths, apart from taking them to rehabilitation centers? So these are all questions that we'll continue to grapple with, and really encouraging you to continue participating in the Zoom space. We'll continue to highlight our social media posts as well. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor over to the moderator of the next segment. We're going to move into a multi-stakeholder discussion. And now I'm excited to pass over the virtual microphone to Namrata Sharma. Namrata, over to you to lead us into the next session of this day.
Thank you so much, Dustin. And you did a wonderful job. It was I had such a lovely time to listen to such amazing speakers. And I think now we should quickly move on to our first multi-stakeholder session. I am Namrata Sharma, and I am a counselor from YWCA of Delhi, India. And today I will be the moderator for our first multi-stakeholder session. I would first like to introduce our speakers for the day. We have John May, Secretary General, Duke of Edinburgh International Award, a campaigner, storyteller, teacher, youth worker, independent diplomat, writer, broadcaster, urban cyclist, habitual cake eater, and mischief maker. Wow, what an introduction. Then we have Irene Tonga, YWCA Malawi Project, Youth United Against COVID-19. We have Joanne Lai, who is a health specialist with UNICEF headquarters in New York, where she's a health section technical focal point for adolescent health, school health, and mental health. And finally, we have Anjali Singla, who is a psychologist and a mental health advocate, is the founder of Insightful Mind Therapy and works with youth in rural and tribal communities. We have an amazing panel here, and I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful time. But before we go into the questions, I would just like to lay the foundation for today's session. As we all know, the global pandemic has impacted the health and well-being of the youth around us. You know, the apprehension around their futures, the ongoing virtual classes, and the education that has gone completely online, the public restrictions that are going on and off daily. The government is changing their rules, their policies every day because we are not aware where the pandemic will end. This has led to a lot of loss of education in the young people, and which is further leading to a lot of mental health issues, including isolation, withdrawal, and they feel withdrawn, they feel the lack of communication with their loved ones, and therefore the pandemic has caused unprecedented interruption to the delivery of non-formal education programs to young people all around the world. This has had an adverse effect, particularly on the young people living in different circumstances and belonging to the marginalized groups. The lack of electricity, the lack of internet connectivity has given, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress to these young people. So today, we'd like to focus on the resilience of these young people and discuss with all our speakers here how they and their organizations are supporting young people in the light of the challenges the pandemic has brought. So let's begin with our first speaker of the day, who is Irene Tonga. And hi, Irene, how are you doing?
Hi, Marta, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good too. So Irene, I'd like to ask you, how has the COVID-19 pandemic uniquely impacted young people's health and well-being? What are your views on that?
Okay, well, I'd say the issues are cross-cutting, and you've already highlighted some of them. I think the loss of education, formal and non-formal. So here, because already we have an issue with data fares, they're quite high in the world. And even internet access for most young people is something that's just not there. So we've had young people mostly out of school the whole of last year for a bit of this year. And actually we've seen, especially when it comes to adolescent girls and young women, a drastic rise in teenage pregnancies. And unfortunately, most of these issues were recorded as defilement cases, even at household level, because where they do have parents or guardians, we've seen a lot of people losing their jobs. We've also seen a lot of businesses shutting down. So the home environment is very uncertain for them as well. And as a result, we've seen, of course, a rise in mental health illness, a rise in substance abuse, also a rise in gender-based violence at household level. So there are definitely a lot of issues that young people have been facing since the pandemic began.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for creating the base and beginning the discussion from how mental health issues have risen during the pandemic period. And like I always say, it is not just the pandemic that has affected the human race, it is also the mental health issues that is now further, affecting everybody around us. Thank you, Irene. I would now like to move on to our second speaker, who is Anjali Singla. So Anjali, what are the key policy and programming priorities and needs for young people as the COVID-19 pandemic continues?
First of all, I agree with everything Irene just said, from the fact that the issues it's not that the mental health issues are new, it's just that they've come out so strongly during the pandemic. I think from a mental health perspective, we need to recognize that these things are not isolated. When our young people do not get equity in terms of educational and healthcare opportunities, mental health will, become an issue. We need to look at accessibility of mental health care, affordability. For example, somebody asked in the chat box, fantastic question. Go question your policymakers. Mental health needs to be covered in insurance policies. Read up on your local mental health care acts. What is it that they're saying? Because it needs to be a collaboration between our policymakers and our youth mobilizers, because we have a lot to learn from our community, as well as our three presenters established that a lot is happening in these communities now. From our policymakers, it is time that action is supported in terms of access to technology, access to resources, access to database, and just sort of powering through in terms of creating this collaboration that is intergenerational and multi-sectoral.
Absolutely. I think you've actually touched the gist of what we're trying to discuss here, how we need to connect the government and the youth, because unless both these levels are connected, we will not be able to create a change. The cycle will not move. The engine will not move. Yes. Thank you so much, Anjali. I would now like to welcome Joanna Lai. And hi, Joanna. My question for you is, why is engaging young people in the policies and programming around COVID-19 response and recovery important? Why is it important to involve a younger generation?
Great. Thank you so much, Namrata. I think first, it's important to note that throughout the course of our life, there are especially important opportunities for shaping the trajectory of our health as individuals and also as a society. And adolescence through to the mid-20s is definitely one of those critical periods. Being not quite children, but yet not being quite adults means young people have very specific needs and specific unique needs as well. And how, for us to know how it is that they're being affected, what it is that they want and what it is they need, and how best to reach them within a COVID-19 response and recovery, it makes sense that they need to be engaged, right? In health programs and services, we've seen that when adolescents, when young people are engaged, there is a positive association with the quality of care that they receive, not only the quality of care, but also the effectiveness of programs, and also importantly, equity is improved. And so I think from the standpoint of having a response and a recovery that actually produces better results and that is cost effective, engaging young people is actually key. And we also know that when health and well-being outcomes are better for young people, that means they can be also better in adulthood. They can also be better for the next generation. So your energy, your solutions, your engagement, your innovations matter a lot. And we need them to ensure that the COVID-19 recovery response policies and programs are working for you guys.
Yeah, and I'm sure you all are doing an amazing job in the field. You know, you are creating opportunities for youngsters, the youth, to involve in how, you know, in dealing with such issues. So thank you so much, Joanna. I would now like to welcome John May. And sir, I would like to ask you, how do we ensure that governments and international organizations such as the UN engage with young people as equal partners in creating solutions for the post-COVID response and recovery?
Hi, Namrata. Lovely to see you. Happy International Youth Day to you.
Thank you.
The question you ask is a really, really important one. And I would start by wanting to pay real respect to the UN and the work that it has done in leading the world in proving that young people have the right to equity, have the right to accessibility, as colleagues have already discussed. For me, the challenge is about helping policymakers go into conversations with young people that are truly rooted in respect. Equality starts with respect. And that respect has to start with an understanding that young people the world over, particularly over the last 18, 24 months, have already in their individual communities found solutions and taken action rather than just talking about it. If you have the opportunity to go and visit globalyouthmobilization.org, that work of GYM, you see the amazing solutions that young people have found and the extraordinary projects that they're undertaking, often in very, very small communities that together are making a massive difference. So my message to policymakers around the world, to governments, to influencers, is listen with respect to the voice of young people and what they are already achieving, and co-create with them, work with them, not for them, to find the solutions as we move out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just couldn't find the unmute button. Thank you so much, John. Actually, the way you all have been answering the questions, there is hardly anything to say because it's like a gift wrap. You just perfectly, everything fits into the right puzzles. And yeah, without reiterating what John says because he said it so perfectly. I would like to move on to Irene again. Let's circle back. And Irene, I have a question for you. How do your normal non-formal education programs cultivate youth-led solutions and empower young change makers in your community?
Okay, I think I'd say primarily we focus on bridging the information gaps because you find that especially young people in marginalized setups, they're usually not even aware whether it's what policies are there in place to serve them, because we do have a problem in Malawi where we have a number of good policies in place, but there's no implementation of those policies. And even where they are, they don't know exactly how do they connect with their duty bearers, how do they connect with their local government leaders. So that's another area that we work in, to connect them and to build those networks between young people and their duty bearers, and even building networks of young people themselves, because they tend to be in isolation, and sometimes it's that overwhelming feeling of maybe I'm struggling through this alone, or I have this idea but I don't know how can I connect with other young people who are like-minded, or how can we grow this idea. So even just building those networks of young people and building their skills in general, aside from the networking skills, how do they advocate for their causes, how do they mobilize communities, and even just providing the safe spaces for young people to get together and discuss their ideas and even maybe discuss solutions for some of the challenges that they're facing.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Irene. I personally, I strongly believe what Irene said. I completely resonate with it because non-formal education stays with you for life. That's something that I really believe in. And no matter how much education, whatever degree you get, non-formal education is something that you will take on from one generation to another. And that's where we can make the actual change. Thank you so much, Irene. Joanna, for this message. I would now like to move on to Anjali. Anjali, what is your message to your peers who are struggling with the health, social, economic, and other consequences of the pandemic?
First of all, recognize it is not on you. As uncertain as things are right now, it is understandable. We are scared, there is anxiety, but this is not on you. Lean on your community. This is the time to lean on your community, support networks, and question those who hold spaces of power around you to what is it that they've done in providing that sense of stability for you. And the other is seek help if you're struggling. Self-care is not always personal. Sometimes it's communal. So reach out to friends, call somebody if you feel you need to process some dark thoughts. But it's understandable that you're feeling scared and you're not alone.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with it. Being a mental health professional myself, I completely agree what Anjali says, and I can't believe that this was so quick, and we've already reached the the end of our first multi-stakeholder session. And to quickly conclude with what our wonderful speakers have said, I would just say that follow what they have said. They have been in the field. They have worked at the grassroots level, and when you interact with people one-on-one, that's when you realize where the actual problems are rising. And once you start working at the grassroots level to the way up, you will be able to make an actual change. And the fact that we need to connect our government officials, the gatekeepers of our society need to know what's actually happening at the grassroots level. That's where we will be able to, actually make an actual change in the society. And in the end, what Anjali said, very, very simple techniques like just communicating, having people around you talk about mental health, creating awareness. If you're capable enough, you're trained enough, try to provide that knowledge to other people, because again, this knowledge needs to come now. This is the time, this is the need of the hour. And if we are not creating that awareness, our generations coming forward will be suffering with mental health issues more than right now. With that, I would like to thank all my speakers, like a hearty thanks to all my speakers who have come here and shared their views and generated so much of knowledge out of, just, within 15-20 minutes, I learned so much. So thank you everyone for coming here and sharing your experience, your knowledge. With that, we come to an end to our first session. And now I would like to pass the mic to Dustin. Dustin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Namrata, for facilitating that incredibly engaging discussion. I totally agree. What a gift to have our speakers crystallize not only why young people need to be brought to the table, but specific examples of how we can do that. And I particularly appreciated the focus on the COVID-19 context, a situation where I think is an opportunity for us to signal the imperative that we are not building for young people, we need to build back better with young people. And this final note, I believe, of proximity, this final note on being able to build back better with proximity with those who are most closely related to these issues is an important one that I hope will carry throughout this Youth Lead Innovation Festival. So Namrata, once again, thank you so much for facilitating that discussion, and to all of our speakers for participating. I want to take a moment and acknowledge that we are wrapping up our first segment for day one of the Youth Lead Innovation Festival, but don't go anywhere yet because we have a lot more in store. Once again, I want to encourage everyone to use the Q&A features in the chat. Feel free to use that to share your reactions to our speakers and continue to share your initiatives and stories, and also on social media. So in just a bit, I'm going to go ahead and throw up once again the hashtag as well as the tag that you can use in order to share your ideas. We'll continue to surface them during our event today. Up next, we will have an opportunity to discuss another topic that young people around the world are advocating for, and that is climate action and biodiversity. I want to recognize that this week feels like a critical moment for climate action with the IPCC report that said that we are entering a code red for the climate crisis. And I think this session feels more relevant than ever in this moment, and I am excited to hear from our young solution makers about the ways we can collectively work together to close these gaps. To start our segment on climate action and biodiversity, I am thrilled to welcome our keynote speaker, Didier Trebuch, the UN Resident Coordinator for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. Over to you, Didier.
Good morning. Thank you, Dustin. Can you hear me? Good. Thank you very much. And really, I'm thrilled to join this Youth-led festival. And from what I've listened up to now, that inspirational group of talented youth from all around the globe. So first, I want really to wish you a happy International Youth Days, and you rightly said, with the recent IPCC report, the situation is worrying on the front of climate change or biodiversity conservation and environmental sustainability. So I want to thank you to invite me to provide some initial reflection. And as you said, I'm resident coordinator. I work in a multi-country office leading the UN development system in 10 countries and territories in the Eastern Caribbean. And all are what we call small island developing states, SEEDs, as you may know. And all SEEDs face basically various layers of vulnerabilities to external shocks. And we're right now in the middle of a hurricane season. And we have already witnessed, how the lack of climate ambition is having direct consequences with more frequent and severe hurricanes, floods, but also drought in those small territories. We can also anticipate, of course, sea level rise that is about to threaten local coastal communities and livelihood. So basically, in the Caribbean, as many other regions, youth are one of the most affected populations during after crisis, especially if they lack support system in their entourage. And we have witnessed this. For example, before the COVID crisis, an employment rate of youth could be as high as 50% in some islands, but it has since then skyrocketed as a result of the COVID socioeconomic impact. But at the same time, we know that youth are very resilient, resourceful, very creative too, and with the sustainability of seeds severely threatened by climate change, biodiversity loss, and multiple crises, as we have observed. Recently, we had a volcano eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines a bit more than 2 months ago. So now more than ever, I believe that we need to untap the tremendous potential that youth have to serve as change agents for climate actions, because the situation is an emergency situation. And for that, they should be given a voice. Because when you occupy the public space, and we have seen this recently again, you can influence decision-making, which is far too often, we know, being paralyzed by short-term considerations. So first, I would say youth stepping up is critical in my opinion. But second, investing in youth is a precondition, both in finance, of course, but also equipping them with technical capacities, because by doing so, it has already, and we see this, and will also secure in the future valuable returns, especially to combat the effect of climate change, to reduce unemployment, and to ensure a sustainable future for all. So I'll say here is why through some examples that we have in the Caribbean of youth-led innovations in climate change or biodiversity conservation. Just a couple of them. In St. Lucia, we have, for example, a very interesting group of creative young persons that were supported to develop the first sustainable community energy system in the island to help poor and vulnerable households to reduce their carbon footprints, but to access also affordable energy. In Barbados, we have, for example, sponsored an intern and research scientist at the University of West Indies with a team to use local agricultural waste and sargassum seaweed to create biodegradable alternative to plastic. And for those who are familiar with sargassum seaweed, we have invasions that currently threatens the coast and local livelihood as a result of pollution and climate change. So those are basically just sample of supported youth-led initiatives, but these are others have by all accounts reaped extremely valuable returns on investment. Jobs have been created, skills have been acquired, but have also transformed many of them into well-respected entrepreneurs, farmers, activists, or even environmentalists. And we have, for example, for the next COP26 in Glasgow, 26 ambassadors from the Caribbean that are going there to make heard their voice. So in the end, I want to assure that the UN remains committed. In fact, here in the UN team in the Eastern Caribbean, we are trying to walk the talk, not only with the previous examples, but we are also launching what we call a youth sounding board. So this is meant to capture the perspective of a core group of young people from the 10 different nations here and integrate them in our cooperation framework with the countries and in the work program of the various UN agencies. So that's one of the ways, to integrate better the voices of youth in decision making. So my final message is in this line: we need to bring young people at the core of decision making if we want to make a difference. And all of you, keep it up, step up with your patience, because we really need you to make a difference. So I'll stop here. I know the time is limited, but I want again to wish you all a happy International Youth Day.
Thank you so much for those opening remarks. I, in particular, focusing in on the youth-led initiatives that you're aware of, and also appreciate your commitment to continuing to center youth voices through this youth sounding board. Thank you for your leadership, Didier, and for starting out this session with such a strong note of youth leadership. We are now excited to hear additional ideas from young innovators who are working on this track, working on solutions for climate action and biodiversity. And I'm excited to welcome our first speaker, Taiwo Ogunwumi from Geohazard. Taiwo, I'm going to pass the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Taiwo Ogunwumi, and I'm a Nigerian. I'm the president of Geohazard Mapping Initiative, a youth-led initiative supporting one of the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster reduction, which is substantially increase the availability and access to multi-disaster early warning system and disaster information. At Geohazard Mapping Initiative, we are contributing towards the achievement of Sustainable Goal 11, which is to make city and urban settlement increasingly safe and resilient, and Sustainable Goal 13, which emphasizes on climate action. How do we contribute to this? We deploy youths who are skilled at using geographic information system and satellite image analysis to create prediction map of floods that might occur at major cities and communities in Nigeria. According to the UN General Release report, it stated that in the last 20 years, climate-induced events such as flooding have affected over 1.6 billion people, resulting in property damage exceeding 50 billion. Hence, the need for flood maps and early warning system to keep people more informed and prepared. At Geohazard Mapping Initiative, our produced flood sustainability maps are being shared with disaster and emergency management institution, government ministry, community leader, and other environmental response stakeholders. These maps are used for flood early warning planning and to improve flood adaptation, all in the effort to reduce disaster and minimize climate change impact. At the beginning of the year 2021, over 20 youth, men and female inclusive, who are members of the initiative, created 25 static and web interactive maps showing various communities in Nigeria that are accessible to flood. We also map out the internet displaced camps in Borno State, northeastern Nigeria. These are locations where we have displaced people who have experienced past conflict and are also susceptible to flood. At Geosat Mapping Initiative, we understand that the climate crises are increasing, but as youth with great skills and knowledge, we'll keep on investing our best to minimize the impact of flood by providing access to prediction maps and post-disaster maps, which are essential in responding to climate-induced events. In the coming year, we anticipate to deploy more youth and provide map of several other climate-induced hazards, not just flooding alone. We also anticipate to map out other African countries, all geared towards the effort of mitigating the climate-induced hazard. We believe that this cannot be possible except the support of other youth as well as the other global leader. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Taiwo, for that remarks and for providing such a context-specific solution to the issues that you're seeing in your context. Now I'd like to move on to the next presentation. I'd like to welcome Disha Sarkar from the ACE Youth Forum to share her presentation. Going over to you, Disha, handing over the virtual microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Justin, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Disha Sarkar from India, and I'm one of the coordinators of the ACE Youth Forum, that is the Action for Climate Empowerment Youth Forum 2021, organized by the ACE Working Group of Yongbo, the youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So firstly, I would like to thank all the organizers of today's event for having us in this event of the International Youth Day. Now I would like to share with you some of the insights from our forum. So the forum was focused around two tracks. The first track was focused around sharing of best practices at the local level and at the community level. And the second track was focused around sharing of activities and collective brainstorming for writing a new work program prior to the COP26. This was a very unique endeavor to integrate both the knowledge sharing experiences and also integrate with the advocacy related discussion. And we believe that we had a very robust discussion and we had very fruitful insights from the participants. However, what concerns us at this moment are the barriers in the implementation of the action for climate empowerment related activities. The first thing that we would like to talk about here is about the financial support and the lack of accessibility to the youth-led organizations. Mostly the funders and the sponsors have this complaint that most of the youth-led organizations lack the reliability and the lack of credibility to get any kind of fund. Moreover, they have the fund, the organizers and the funders have the fund, but they don't know where to invest, whom to give the fund. In such a scenario, our unique solution that we have proposed as a working group is the introduction of a virtual marketplace. The virtual marketplace will bring the funders, the potential funders from both government and non-government sources and the local level NGOs in a common platform. And it will help in the deciphering of the information of the available funds in the global arena, and will also help in the capacity building of the local level NGOs, because we see that the proposal making process is also a very tedious one, and the local level NGOs are not very aware of about the whereabouts, how to go about for the proposal making process. So in that case, this virtual marketplace will have experts who will give the capacity building also. The second thing that we came forward was about the language and communication barrier. Although the UN meetings have introduced the process of translation, but yet the outcome documents, the documents that are come out as a result of these meetings, most of them are in the UN languages or in the English. However, it has to be more accessible to the local communities, and therefore we advocate that this document should be converted to the local languages, and it's a very essential element. And the last and the most important thing that we would like to highlight here is about the climate related works are mostly voluntary work. At this age, I being from a developing country and I being a woman from a developing country, I believe that this age should be focused around building my career. And now the thing that is that I am devoting most of my time and energy, that is being voluntary service. So I do not think that is acceptable. And moreover, when we talk about institutionalization of the kind of work that we are doing, we are not talking about tokenizing of youth by simply funding our travel expenses to go to a COP or a COI, or simply by organizing an annual workshop. It should not be that. It has to be more concrete solution, like maybe forming a specialized task force, and a specialized task force which has experts from the field of action related to climate action, and moreover having the youth on board in this kind of specialized task force. So these are some of the avenues that our team would like to highlight upon. And as I conclude, I would like to say that the world is boiling and the islands are on the verge of submersion. As we stand at the helm of a human-induced catastrophe, let me remind you, I want my children to witness the beauty of the Himalayas and not hear the heart-wrenching story of its existence that doomed because of our activities. To the world leaders and to all the institutions, I request you, you are talking about our future, have us on the discussion table, have us amidst us. Otherwise, this is unacceptable. Nothing about us without us. Thank you. Namaskar.
Disha, thank you so much for that compelling call to action. I appreciate you raising concerns that you're facing as a youth leader. Particularly want to express gratitude for this idea of a virtual marketplace. I look forward to seeing how it will catalyze youth-led innovations around the world. I also want to just bring back that last point around compensating youth leadership, something that I believe will be imperative to systemically centering youth voices. And now moving on to our last presenter, we have Robert Muchiri from Comb Green Solutions with us to share about their solution for climate action and biodiversity. Handing the virtual floor over to you, Robert. We'll just take a moment to make sure that Robert is still here and able to participate. I think we're having just a bit of tech difficulty, so we'll move on quickly to our expert panel to react to the first two solutions that we've already heard about. We have a wonderful set of experts here with us who were keynote listeners listening in on our young people's words. I'd like to start by introducing our group of 3 expert panelists, which include Lisa Kuribel, head of the Joint SDG Fund, Sandeep Singh Gupta, Global Coordinator of the IUCN Climate Change Portfolio, and also Celia Dobarzek, Senior Climate Change Specialist at the Adaptation Fund. We're going to take a moment to walk through each of their remarks, and we'll start with Lisa. I'd love to invite you first to kick us off. Lisa, great to see you. What were some of your reactions or noticings from our Young Changemakers presentations?
Yeah, thanks so much, Justin, and greetings, everyone. Great to see everyone. So excited to be here. Delighted to represent the United Nations, the Joint SDG Fund, which is an innovative, sort of scrappy startup inside the huge $50 billion machine, which we know is the UN Development System. You know, Taiwo and Disha really underline so many elements of what we need young people to be reminding us of. One, the issues are not going away. Urgency is absolutely required. And also stop treating us like token young people and bring us right up to the table as full participants. And I've been in the UN system longer than I want to admit. And we are guilty of not always giving you a proper position. And I think that the tide is changing. I think there is more opportunity beyond internships, although internships are great. They are a part of career building. There are more and more breakthroughs in how to put young people into short-term consultancy roles, short-term advisory roles, start to publish your words, start to give you opportunities for blogs and vlogs and all the rest. So the Joint SDG Fund began that way. We have youth advisors from several regions of the world. They are on the payroll. They're not paid like UN staff because we have a lot of systems around us that have a lot of different, experience requirements, but I think the tide is changing. So keep pressing. The idea of a virtual marketplace is brilliant, Disha. The idea of giving everyone an opportunity to see what you offer, and that's far beyond what the UN agencies do. It goes towards what the NGOs need, and it also starts to fill the gap that you've pointed out, which faces many of us, which is we can't always go down to the micro level for that $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 grant, which is often the lift that you might need as a small, nascent, emerging group of young people who want to get something done in your community at the local level. So partly it's about partnerships. I think your platform might also be able to help you link up with one another. You start to find common themes, you start to see regional opportunities, et cetera. So I think that's really a brilliant idea. I think a call to action that is actionable. There's always the challenge of, well, what could I do? You have so many listeners, and congratulations to everyone tuning in that are from many parts of the world. They might not feel it's that easy to find all of us. So how do we find the easy liftoff that can connect us all? I think this conference is an example, but we need more. And we'd certainly love to amplify efforts like this through the Joint SDG Fund. Some of our programs are now requiring a youth component. So when we give money to the UN country team, DDA is an example of a resident coordinator who comes up with great ideas for his region of 7, 8 countries, right? Islands in the Caribbean. And he brings together the country team, and then he ensures that there's a youth participation element. He ensures young people are engaged. So that becomes a self-fulfilling element. If the money is contingent on youth participation, they're going to need young people like you, Disha, like Taiwo, like Dustin to step in and to fill that, right? We're going to need you at the table, need you at the design stage and all the rest. So we do have that more and more. We'd love more and more from you. And I think, keep demanding more, but also keep learning more. We can't change the UN system rapidly. We are a huge system built on 75 years of tradition. You are the generation to ask, is that tradition serving you? And if the answer is not enough, then how do we adjust? How do we tweak? But you have to give us pathways. I grew up with a post office. You've never been to a post office. I didn't grow up with Uber. I used to stand on a corner in the rain, hoping a taxi would go by. So we are from different generations. So you have to, in a way, try to find ways to connect us. And we're there, we're listening, we want you there, but sometimes we're a little bit outdated. So bear with us. We have the same goals, and we'll make progress together. I'm going to put my email out on the chat. I'll be submitting a video. So the Joint SDG Fund is waiting to hear from anyone out there listening in today. We'd love to put you on our youth corner. We'd love to hear from you. So arms open to welcome you in. Dustin, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, once again for your commitment to young people and the work that you're doing to center young voices in your own work. Before we move on to Sandeep and invite Sandeep into the conversation, I wanted to take a moment to shed light on Robert's solution. Robert is the leader at Comb Green Solutions, and the programs have served as good practice for sustainable managing green spaces in Nairobi. Comb Green Solutions have used their training and expertise in ecosystems development to reclaim riparian lands and transform dumpster sites into recreational areas for people living in Nairobi's informal settlements. They have also used their platform and leadership to transform more than 120 youth involved in criminal activities into community change makers. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge Robert's leadership and Robert's work. We also want to acknowledge that we are using UN Youth Envoy social medias as well as the SDG Fund social medias. Those will all be shared on the UN Youth Envoy social media site. So feel free to check those out, and we'll also be sharing information about Robert's solution there as well. We'll go ahead and move forward to Sandeep Sengupta, Global Coordinator for IUC and Climate Change Portfolio. Sandeep, so excited to have you here with us. Passing the virtual floor over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Perfect. So thank you once again. I'm really delighted to be joining this important event here today. And I couldn't begin before first conveying my best wishes to all of you on the occasion of International Youth Day. Now, the power and importance of youth in helping to mobilize greater awareness and action on the critical global challenges that the world is facing today, whether it's climate change or whether it's biodiversity loss or indeed COVID recovery, just to name 3, that power and importance is thankfully being increasingly seen and recognized today. So in that context, IUCN is really honored to be here with all of you today and to support today's important session on climate action and biodiversity. So on our part, we fully support the greater engagement of youth, as Didier pointed out, in global agenda setting and decision making on these critical matters. So just to share some of the work that we within IUCN are doing in this space. So earlier this year in April, as some of you might know, IUCN organized the One Nature, One Future Global Youth Summit, which brought together over 15,000 participants from across 170 countries, bringing together 10,000 hours of exchanges on what the youth have been doing and what youth innovation and youth leadership in the space of conservation and in the space of conservation linked to climate change is happening. Now that all of that led to a draft outcome statement, which is by coincidence, actually not by coincidence, but in order to mark the International Youth Day, opening for consultation today. And that will be presented at the Youth Summit, which we will also be organizing at our forthcoming IUCN Congress in Marseille on the 3rd of September, and which will subsequently be presented to our 1,400 state and NGO members at the Congress itself. So please engage in the consultation process that we have started today. And finally, we are also undertaking a review of IUCN's own engagement with youth to better help integrate the younger generation at all levels and in all parts of the union's activities. So this is a process that we have started. We are very keen to move forward on it in the context of our 2021-2024 work program. So watch the space and please continue with your leadership on climate action and biodiversity. Now to the matter at hand, we really heard some really strong presentations from both Taiwo and Disha, and it's a pity that Robert wasn't able to join today, but I think we heard a good taster from you, Dustin, as to what he was about to present. And these, I think, are excellent examples of youth leadership and youth innovation. And the point I want to make is that they are just 3 examples. I'm sure out there are thousands of more examples, and that's the power of youth innovation and youth action that I think needs to be amplified and scaled up further. Now, just a couple of quick reflections on what we heard both from Taiwo's presentation and from Disha's presentation. Taiwo, I think the work that you are doing in hazard mapping is really critical, and the fact that you're able to mobilize youth volunteers who are skilled in GIS to do this is really fantastic. Now, the importance of this can't be underscored any more than I am doing right now, because as we know, the climate crisis is upon us. It is hitting vulnerable people in vulnerable societies around the world much more than anyone else. So for you and your colleagues to be able to do this hazard mapping, I think is a really important exercise. And you're doing it in the context of floods. Now, let me throw one suggestion back to you. One of the additional drivers of floods over and above climate change is also the degradation and loss of our ecosystems. So forest deforestation and forest loss upstream often exacerbates and causes flooding downstream. So as you do your hazard mapping through the technologies that you're mobilizing, maybe the same technologies can also be used to identify the areas in which forest loss is happening, where the forest deforestation flood interaction is more evident, so that information in turn can also drive local communities and state and other actors to take actual practical efforts to address some of these solutions in practical terms. And Disha, I think the engagement that you are doing with the ACE Youth Dialogue is really important. As I think just to give a little bit of background to that, action for climate empowerment, it's as part of Article 6 of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change that was adopted back in 1992. But if you look at what Article 6 is about, it's about education, training, and public awareness. And as Didier mentioned in his opening presentation this week, we heard from the IPCC how seriously climate change is affecting the world today. So I think all of you as youth, you have, in fact, all of us have an equal responsibility to building greater awareness, greater public participation, and greater education on not only the impacts of climate change, but also the possible solutions to climate change. So my suggestion to you would be, I think the idea, as was already pointed out, of a virtual marketplace is really good. It deserves to be supported more. But the other points that you made, I think the one feedback I would give is don't get bogged down by the processes, so your audience will not benefit as much on knowing what outcome language came out of a UNFCCC COP in which language per se. But what they will be really interested in knowing is how can the youth help to create greater public awareness on climate action, help to reach out and educate more of more of society, help in training, leaders across the world to better understand the climate crisis. And here again, I think the role of social media, so if you can mobilize the power of youth to bring out TikTok videos, for example, on how, what are the effects of climate change, or possibly what are the solutions to climate change, then that alone might be worth more than a dry decision language coming out of the UNFCCC process, or indeed from some of the language that we have within IUCN's own resolutions itself. So let me just end there, and once again congratulate all of you for the fantastic work that you're doing, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for your great feedback, and also once again your reaffirmation of the power of young people when they are brought to the table and given the agency to do so. We'll end our expert panel with Saliha Dobarzek, Senior Climate Change Specialist at the Adaptation Fund. Saliha, it's so wonderful to have you here with us. Passing the virtual floor over to you.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you for having the Adaptation Fund at this festival. We are committed to supporting youth and innovation, and of course our mission is to help the most vulnerable in the world adapt to climate change. And without going into too many details, due to limited amount of time, we do that by working through 56 at the moment implementing entities. And those are organizations that are accredited with the Adaptation Fund, and they're able to access funding from us for projects in developing countries. Now, the Adaptation Fund supports innovation. It has the innovation facility, which is basically an umbrella under which at this time we have 3 active funding windows. And one of those windows is the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, which is administered by UNDP and UNEP with Climate Technology Network and Center, and which was deliberately designed to be accessible to beyond our accredited implementing entities. So this is the sort of a vehicle where I think youth-led or youth-centered initiatives may find a good home and support. My colleague from AFCIA, UNDP, is actually with us, and he will be speaking later. And I suppose he will tell you a little bit more about this. But what I wanted also to mention is that from the perspective of a funder like the Adaptation Fund, I think when we talk about youth and solutions, there are a few different things. So one is, for example, the Geohazards Risk Mapping Initiative, which is basically a great climate change solution. Now, the climate change solution happens to be devised, maybe, and implemented or supported by youth, but in some ways, this is incidental, even though the inclusion of youth is not a small thing. I wouldn't mean that. But innovation often comes from youth. So supporting innovation properly essentially entails, not discriminating against youth who may have the best solution. So from the funder perspective, looking to support a project in adaptation, these kinds of initiatives are easy to fit in, relatively easy to fit in without even creating new rules or new space necessarily. But on the other side, there are initiatives like the ACE Youth Forum, and I think I see those more like less than a solution, but rather a youth challenge in climate change. And this is, I think, an important distinction. For us to support these kinds of efforts, which need to be supported, that deliberately place youth in the center, we do need policies and we do need additional fiscal space or budgets. At the Adaptation Fund, we already have some of that. For example, the inclusion of youth is spelled out under the topics and themes that are eligible under the innovation facility. But I think it's really important to create the space broadly beyond this for putting the concerns and priorities and values of today's youth, as they are, I think, the primary stakeholders, as opposed to the decision makers today, who are maybe becoming the secondary stakeholders more and more. And this kind of creation of space requires advocacy. So I really appreciated Disha's remarks, which I think illustrated this very well. I think the importance of enabling youth as solution makers for these kinds of challenges is maybe obvious. But also I think what's really important is engaging champions and supporters who are not youth to make that happen. Okay, so as a very practical suggestion, maybe as a next step for some of you, I would urge you to look into the list of our national implementing entities, which can be found on our website, and I can put that in the chat to save you a few seconds, and see if there's one in your country. So they are able to apply for small grants for innovation, actually large grants too, but small grants, we have plenty of funding for that. And they might appreciate hearing from you and hearing your ideas and proposed solutions, especially in this time when the pandemic has compounded these already critically and overwhelming challenges, we can say. I think it could be an excellent way to get involved, to see how you can help them advance their organization's mission, as well as how they can support you and youth and engagement of youth more broadly. In closing, I do want to mention that from the Adaptation Fund perspective, biodiversity and nature-based solutions more broadly are highly valued as solutions. And I would really love to see more adaptation initiatives that incorporate approaches that work with nature in rural or urban settings. And I think that this is such a promising area that is currently nowhere near realizing its potential. I will stop here and thank you once again, and happy International Youth Day.
Thank you so much, Sliha, for your remarks. I just want to take a moment to express gratitude for raising a few resources to support the work of youth-led initiatives, and also raising the importance of partnerships that absolutely is crucial in this work. Once again, thank you to all of our experts. I appreciate how all of your remarks touched on similar themes on ways in which we can prioritize the concerns and values of today's youth at the center of funding solutions, funding strategies, and organizational commitments. And of course, thank you to everyone for a very productive solution segment. Before we transition to the last segment of this session, I am excited to shed some acknowledgement to some comments that we're seeing in Zoom and also on social media. From Yuritsi, we have a question around with what mitigation measures can we address climate change, and in what ways can young people contribute? We have another question around the everyday actions that young people can take to close these gaps. And another question around the use of coal mines. Countries continue to build coal mines in order to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. 80% of coal needs to remain in the ground. These are questions that I'm hoping we can take up in our discussions as well. I also wanted to shed light on some social media updates. We are hearing from Liam and Abel, happy International Youth Day. Young people are often referred to as the future, but for me, they are the now, and their voices can have such a positive impact on what the future looks like. Absolutely agreed, Liam. Thanks for sharing that. And from our youth lead correspondent, Sophia Kiani. Sophia is shouting out Disha's call to action. I want my children to witness the beauty of the Himalayas and not the heartbreaking story of its existence. I just want to really demonstrate the resonance that statement had with our community. Once again, keep these coming. I'm going to encourage you to keep using the hashtag YouthLead and hashtag Youth Day and tagging at UN Youth Envoy. We want to see pictures of how you're attending the Innovation Festival, so be sure to tag at UN Youth Envoy in all of your stories as well. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce the last segment of today's session. Allow me to pass the floor over to the moderator for the discussion. Up next, Ernest Gibson, who is a member of the UN Secretary General Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. Ernest, so grateful to have you here. Thank you for your leadership, and passing the virtual microphone over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Dustin. Hopefully volume is working okay. I've been using Zoom for the last sort of 18 months, and I can't believe that I just forgot to push unmute. But here we are. Nisambolo Vanaka, Noaya Maori, and welcome everybody to this interactive discussion where we're looking at what youth wants, what youth wants, but really honing in on this idea of an uncompromised future. Before we start, I would like to begin by paying tribute to the Indigenous people of the land that I'm joining you all from today. And by extension, I'd like to pay my respects to the Indigenous people of the land and sea from where you're all joining us from. I'm Ernest and I'm from Fiji. I work for the World Health Organization looking after the Pacific. And I'm also a member of the UNSG's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. For this particular session, we'll be looking specifically at solutions and hope. It can be really easy to get bogged down in the frightful realities of the climate crisis, but it is so important that we use this urgency as a way of catalyzing solutions-oriented action. And believe it or not, this level of optimism is coming from an extremely cynical young person. So if I can be hope-filled, anybody can. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Ezra Yego, who is the Global Project Lead for the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Youth. We also have Charles Yu, who's from the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, which is based out of the United Nations Development Program. And our third speaker is my dear friend and a fellow member of the UNSG's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, Archana Sarang. So Archana, if you don't mind, we'll start with you to kick off this discussion and this conversation. And I really want to ask a very simple question to begin with to all our three speakers. And it's really unpacking this idea of an uncompromised future. What does that actually look like? I think it could be something that really becomes this beautiful word or piece of jargon that we file away in a book on a shelf. But really, what does that look like in reality? What do we want our uncompromised futures to look like? So I'm going to hand it over to you, Archana, to kick us off with what you see as your uncompromised future.
For me, what I feel about uncompromised future. So first of all, thank you, Ernest, for this question. And I'm so grateful to be here and a great session and innovation festival organized by UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. So it's been lovely hearing everyone's messages and perspective. So for me, what is uncompromised future is I see a world which is where I'm freely and safely and fearlessly being able to put across my point is something which I feel. And the next thing which I feel for me is very crucial is that a world where we don't have to live in fear that the next day I will be washed off, the next day I'll be evicted, the next day my land will be taken away from me, or the next day I have to migrate to some other place or be displaced. And the third thing which I feel what looks like to be in an uncompromised future is a place where I am able to take my decision and be able to frame policies, not alone, but together with elders and other communities members working together with different stakeholders, where I get to decide about how I am shaping my life, our world, environment, and nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Archana. That's absolutely beautiful. And I couldn't agree more. I think really finding a way of ensuring that we are in a position to realize our full potential is an unmatched desire, I think. I'm gonna ask the same question to you, Charles. So over to you.
No, thank you. I think uncompromised future is what Archana just basically mentioned. But I believe from a UN entity. I'm from the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, under the theme of nature, climate, and energy. A lot of our work is supporting, trying to translate global funder as our donors to try to get to the local level, whether it's to government, to community, and to youth. So in our own opinion, the uncompromised future is really using the UN system, leveraging the partnership, leveraging the network of donors, UN system, private sector, to try to support youth to have a say in policy. to have the resource needed to do some innovation that they want to carry on, to have the capacity building supported by the international system to learn, experience, try out, implement solutions that could work, and receive help to scale up solutions. So that's a simple way to say. I'll probably spend more time a little bit later to describe a few ways we can tangibly do it. I want to pass the floor to the third speaker first. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. I think you dropped so many pearls of wisdom there, Charles. But one really important one is that for young people to be able to actually realize our future, it's really important to have all those safety mechanisms in place to ensure that we're in a position to try some of these difficult things. We're in a position to make mistakes, but also be in a position to then learn from these mistakes and not have these hinder our development going forward. So I'll pass it over to you now, Ezra, to have a final say on this question about what does an uncompromised future look like to you?
Thanks, Ernest, and it's an absolute pleasure to join you here today. I think for me, what an uncompromised future really means is where ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and really the next generation, they don't have to survive, but they have this opportunity to thrive. We are currently living in an ecosystem where a select few, and I'd say I'm one of those who have had the privilege to really thrive with greater opportunities being created by our government and our institutions. So we really need to ensure that really this uncompromised future is where we are all able to coexist and live together. I think even with Sophia's tweet where she talks about she wants her children to see the beauty of the Himalayas, and I think that's the same thing. We want our children to see the beauty of what our forefathers and what we're currently seeing. The protection of vulnerable people, the indigenous people, really just carry forward with all these traditions. And I think something that can ensure that this happens, or really the beauty of that, an uncompromised future, is really trying to ensure that the concept of intergenerational co-leadership is upheld, and through an uncompromised future that where the voices of young people are actually heard. So I think for me, that's what an uncompromised future is for me.
I think the beauty of having this kind of conversation in a really optimistic way is we have an opportunity to really build something amazing. And I think if we were just to take the ideas of Archana and Charles and Ezra about what a future could actually look like, and really start to instill some of these as fundamental norms and not as these kind of fictitious dreams, imagine what that could look like. I think that's the easy part of the conversation, right? This kind of designing what the future could potentially look like. I think the more difficult part of this conversation is how do we reach that? How do we ensure that we can backwards plan from what our big dream is to realize that, to ensure that we get to partake in that kind of utopia, but also that our children continue to be in a position where they can create a utopia of their own for their children, and that baton keeps getting passed on. So the second question, I think, is the more pragmatic part of this question, and I'm going to pose it to all three of you. It's what's one way that you foresee us being able to achieve that future you all described? It's kind of easy to dream of something, but it's not so easy to find the solution. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the three of you have something up your sleeves. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Archana, and tell us how you think we can achieve this wonderful future.
Yeah, so for me, how do we can achieve this future which I just shared? I think one of the very crucial part for us Indigenous people is our culture and tradition, our identity, and the land, forest, and territories. So I think it is very crucial from a solution end that how there are efforts made by the both global and national level in terms of recognizing the rights of Indigenous people over the land and forest. But even if we see in the process of recognition of rights of Indigenous people over the land and forest and territories, it itself is a process. There is land mapping, there is GPS mapping which is happening, there are land records, all this, and there is a need for awareness, there is need for policy making draft. So I want to highlight that there are many laws, both at the national level and the international level. I think it is very important that indigenous youth are being made part of this policy making spaces, wherein they can share the ground realities and insights and ensure that these realities are incorporated in the policy making spaces. Because if they are not involved, what is happening in the ground is something again missing in the laws and policies. So I think that is very crucial. And the second thing, when we say that in terms of implementation also, as I said, land records needs to be checked, the mapping needs to be done by GPS, the traditional knowledge and practices needs to be preserved. So I think if we support indigenous youth in terms of making their own documentary films, highlighting their own issues through photography or the projects, and also emphasizing what are the practices or what are the solution, like for example rainwater harvesting, multi-cropping patterns, or also the traditional forest protection practices and the governance practices. If all these are also documented and these kind of support in terms of documentation, photography, films are also provided, it would be really crucial, which will enable in terms of implementation, which will act as a point of reference for the implementers, that how things are critical and how things can be implemented. So when, most of the time as a challenge, we see that it's the will of the implementers. But if the indigenous people themselves are being there as an implementers, then the issue of will can also be addressed, is what I feel, which is, I feel it is very important that indigenous communities also needs to be in the process of implementation. So that is the second thing which I would like to emphasize. And the third thing which I would like to say is that it is very important, like for example, if we see here in India and in also Latin America, we see that indigenous communities have alternative to plastic pollution, like whether it is leaf plate cutlery or whether it is chairs, tables, carpets, or articles, a lot of things. But this is again, how do they sustain these practices? Because you need to learn to make those chairs, carpets, and leaf plates. So it is very important that we ensure that they are able to continue this. So for which support in terms of financial and support in terms of capacity building is something I feel it is very important. And similarly, it also goes in terms of the practices of, village level forest protection practices, or organic farming practices, multi-cropping practices. So I think these practices again needs to be documented. A lot of more research needs to be done. A lot of more financial allocation also needs to be done to conduct research. Because I feel traditional knowledge and the modern equipments or technology itself combines together and turns out to be innovation. So this is something which I would like to highlight.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Archana. I mean, like Charles and Ezra, you've dropped 1,000,001 pearls of wisdom for us to really knuckle down into. But a really clear point that you made, I think, that ran through all the 3 points that you were making, links up closely with something Disha mentioned earlier, which is nothing about us without us, ensuring that the people that are involved in, or the people that will be affected by the decisions or the implementation of projects and interventions that are being made, people who will be affected by these need to be involved in those processes. We need to ensure that we have consultative processes that ensure people have an opportunity to be part of their own development processes. And that's extremely important. But I mean, another really great caveat that you added as well was that it's not just about including us in the processes, it's also about ensuring that everything is backed up with resources. We can't have massive plans that require an enormous amount of resourcing, but I mean, the expectation and the reality are not meeting there. And it's really important to ensure that both these things are being connected somewhere, and that they're two parts of the puzzle that are actually being fitted together and not operating in isolation from each other. So thanks for your sharing, Archana. I know, Charles, you were raring to go earlier about some potential solutions. So I'll pass it over to you to share some of your thoughts.
Sure, thank you. I think, first of all, I think youth-led innovation, whatever space we're playing in, is an ecosystem approach. So on the first level, I really appreciate the event that you're hosting right now and connecting all the dots, inviting speakers such as Didier, Saliha, Sandeep, and Lisa, joining the conversation, sharing their view. This is extremely important because it gives a system view on what everyone is doing. Second, let me talk about within UNDP, the different kind of funding windows and actions that are provided to this field. We have a 170 country office, and we have a global program called the Youth Co-Lab. So if you search Youth Co-Lab in Google, you'll find the global program. Through this program, we have supported about 8,000 youth raising their voice, forming policy advice to their government. And also through this program, we support about 1,000 entrepreneurs and startups through funding and capacity building. For the communities and indigenous people, that's an extremely crucial part of UNDP's work. For communities and indigenous people that are seeking fundings to support their resilience building, we have a very successful small grant program called the UNDP Small Grant Program. So if you type SGP UNDP, you'll find this. This program has started since 1992. And we supported 14,500 community-based projects over around 120 countries. So these are really at the grassroots community level projects. And therefore, we also want to share a little bit, when you have a business idea, now you want to bring it to international attention, you really think can scale. We also work with a range of partners. One of our partners, which is called Climate KIC, Climate KIC, they run a very successful climate launchpad program, which is a global competitive program that hosts every year. The next funding window opens in October. So it's a global competition. You'll be able to win actual cash award, and also with a lot of additional funding opportunity when you work with them. They are one of the main EU-funded climate innovation initiatives. Now, let me also introduce a little bit of scale up and growth stage, where I really want to talk to you today about. This is the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator. Thanks to the Adaptation Fund and European Union, we've been able to host this global program of around $16, $17 million of global grant funding to support scaling up of innovation, whether it's youth-led, local-led, and in the innovation, we don't define as technology. We define technology, business practice, behavioral change, and business model. All these can count as innovation. And we provide 60,000 to 120,000 for piloting initiatives that are ready to be tested. And for organizations that already have customer and have beneficiary base, we provide up to 250,000 over the 3 to 4 years to really scale up what they're trying to do. For this, we also partner with CTCN and UNEP, which is another 2 UN entity. They also manage a technical assistance facility as well. So for more information on these 2 programs, I will encourage you to search FINCIA, so it's AFCIA UNDP or AFCIA CTCN UNDP on the internet. You will find it for the first 2 first 1 and 2 link. And we talk to each other. So, and we target slightly different demographic, but these are excellent opportunity provided by international community for supporting innovation, scale up, and its grant funding to local level directly. Thank you very much. I want to pass the ball back to you. I hope this provides some sort of solutions to what we are, what the audience is seeking for today. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your insights, Charles. They were perfect. And I really enjoy the point around the systems approach. I think that's really important that we start to really find ways of taking a step back from some of the individual activities that we're all engaged in and see how this fits into the sort of broader development process. And it really links nicely to a point I think Lisa made earlier around the need for multi-stakeholder partnerships in this kind of work. It's really important that we find ways of ensuring that we can all find what our individual value add to the system is. Not CSOs can't do this alone. The UN cannot do this alone. Communities need support. It's finding ways of ensuring that we all have a role to play and that these things kind of get fitted into one really well-oiled machine and that allows us to run together. And maybe I can just ask if you could pop some of those links that you mentioned, Charles, into the chat for people to be able to reference. That would be fantastic. I'll hand over now to Ezra, who will be able to share some extra insights with us.
Thanks, Anes. I think, over time, we've been really talking about how as young people, we have the power, we have the responsibility to continue holding our governments accountable to implement the Paris Climate Agreement and the Agenda 2030. And I think that's a first step that's being made towards actually achieving really an uncompromised future. But again, we really need to really emphasize on the concept of meaningful youth engagement. And of course, we have institutions like the Joint SDG Fund that are actually really making deliberate efforts and are being intentional in trying to ensure this. Through ensuring that inclusion of young people are being engaged, not only in minor engagement, but also in all stages of policy making, where we have representation that's going beyond tokenism. And I think Lisa talked about this. And I think a very important thing that also Didier really brought about, and something that is really absolutely important, is the allocation of technical and financial resources to enhance youth capacity. And that's very, very important. We have so many youth innovators who are out there who have actually conceptualized and come up with such amazing ideas, but there's that lack of greater investment in the ideas and just in the potential of young people. Because as young people, and really the courage to build a better world. So I think we have a concept here in Africa, a phrase that we coined out called the abundance of young African leaders, but no seats at the table. And I think that's something it's the same thing that's going on across the world. That we have all these amazing young people, but there are very few seats at the table. I achievees who have actually done an amazing job to give young people the opportunity to voice their ideas and all many ideas that they have. So I think really just trying to put all these things together and ensure that we have all these technical resources available. At UNSGSN Youth, we have an amazing program called the Youth Solutions Program, and we're basically trying to advance SDG innovation through an ecosystem that provides young innovators with access to experts, training, and exposure to opportunities. So I'd encourage you to visit that and also be on the lookout for such opportunities. But as young people, we need to just try to spread the word and try to build each other, be global citizens, and just try to ensure that we all have the ability to actually ensure that we have an uncompromised future by coming together and just in the spirit of partnership.
Really wonderful. I think you hit the nail on the head with two really great points to round off this particular session, Ezra. I think highlighting, I tried to think of a better phrase to use here, but highlighting the elephant in the room around meaningful youth engagement across the development sector is really important, because at some stage, I know youth are really good looking and we're fantastic for the photo opportunities, but at some stage we need to be valued for the technical expertise that we can bring to the table. And I think that does need to be called out every day from here on out, because it's certainly something that has yet to be addressed. And it's particularly important that we ensure that young people have the opportunity to be able to influence as many spaces as possible, because that's really important. It's not just about being there for adding a youth voice. It's about being there as technical experts in various fields. It's about being recognized for the agency that we all have. Because unfortunately, if we don't recognize young people for the agency that we have, what we're saying is that actually our ability to influence change is being completely negated. And that's something that we need to vehemently oppose. And then I think really the last point that you made, or towards the end of your intervention, around the importance of holding each other up. I think it's really important that we talk truth to power to systems and institutions that have held young people back for a significant period of time. But it's also really important that we start looking internally across the youth networks that we all work in. And how do we ensure that we can be the friends that we needed to be able to make our way through that doorway of opportunity? How can we be the ones that lift each other up? And being that support network for each other is extremely important. I mean, I would like to extend from my end a really big level to the three speakers, to Charles, to Archana, and to Ezra, for really taking time to share your insight and parts of yourself through this particular dialogue. And I look forward to continuing this conversation, fingers crossed, outside of a Zoom call. And I'm going to hand back over to you, Dustin. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ernest, for facilitating. What a dynamic discussion. And thank you to all of the participants for this multi-stakeholder discussion, which was truly an empowering space and dialogue. What a beautiful question you posed. What is your uncompromised future? I believe that it fully captures the ethos of the Innovation Festival today. It's imagining a world that does not yet exist and helping us understand that it starts with picturing that future and using and leveraging the radical imagination that young people have as a tool to create the innovations that we need. So Ernest, I'm going to borrow that question and pose the same question to our audience members today. What is your uncompromised future? Go ahead and feel free to use the Q&A features in Zoom, or also share on social media. Just as a reminder, we'll be at UN Youth Envoy as well. We're going to take a moment to also highlight some initiatives that will be highlighted across UN Youth Envoy social medias over the next few weeks. The first that we want to spotlight is Shop 141. Shop 141 is a wonderful social e-commerce initiative that is in Indonesia for zero stunting in Indonesia. They facilitate the virtual market and help local female food entrepreneurs who have chosen to make their products available to be ordered through Shop 141. They also commit to allocating 30% of profit to do nutrition rehabilitation for stunting children, also empowerment programs for mothers who have stunting children sustainably, and collaborate with local health officers and local communities. They also build partnerships with local governments and have local youth-led communities to deliver the impact and handle the customer relations to gain repeated orders. So this is just one of the many initiatives that will be highlighted on our social media channels, also reminding you to engage with us at UN Youth Envoy and #YouthLead to be surfaced in our discussion today. And with that, I am excited to wrap up our climate action and biodiversity session. Thank you so much. Snaps and applause to all the presenters and speakers, and a special shout out to all the young change makers who have been sharing their work on the chat through the Q&A chat function, as well as social media. Now I'm excited to move us forward to the last session of the day. We are moving into our last session, economic empowerment and employment. I am very excited to welcome our keynote speaker who will open up this session, Andrea Rems, who is an innovator and entrepreneur from Mexico, as well as the co-founder of Ernadi Aprendi. Looking forward to your remarks, Andrea. The floor is over to you.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Andrea, and I'm a Generation Unlimited Youth Challenge Global winner, as well as a co-founder and CEO, as mentioned, of Ernadi Aprendi. This is an edtech that aims to teach STEM subjects in a fun and innovative way to young girls in Mexico. Today, we find ourselves in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution, as well as the COVID-19 global pandemic. These two phenomena are clearly changing the way we're doing things. For me, these entail having to stop going to the office, not seeing my boyfriend for over a year, and have to shift to a Zoom lifestyle. These changes to our everyday lives are indications of the world transformations going underway. With youth representing a quarter of the world population, not everyone will be prepared for the rapidly changing needs of the labor market. Furthermore, around 267 million youth do not have access to education, and that would provide them with better employment opportunities. This global pandemic has clearly deepened the learning and connectivity crisis that already existed. And our current education system will need to drastically revamp to teach 21st century skills in order to help young people become qualified candidates to join the workforce. Yet, everything is not doom and gloom. On the contrary, youth have proven that in face of adversity, we are those who usually take matters into our hands to move forward. That is why, during events such as this one, we wish to highlight the stories, achievements, and actions taken by youth in order to support the COVID-19 recovery agenda. Resilience has been, is, and will remain a key characteristic of young people. Our biggest wish is to be able to change the current status quo and be able to build a much more sustainable world where everyone is included, not only for us, but also for the generations that are yet to come. Change should not start by the year 2030. We're currently 9 years away from this date. Thus, we need to ensure that all the setbacks caused by the pandemic are addressed and tackled in due time in order to reach all the global goals. A world with inequality, injustice, and lack of opportunities is a stagnant world. And without equal opportunities for everyone, regardless of their identity, ethnicity, race, religion, or gender, we cannot progress. This is why I wake up every day with this motto in mind: thrive to survive, meaning we all need to have the same opportunities to prosper and become equal. Therefore, I would like to invite all the stakeholders involved in the sustainable development world to join forces in order to assure every human being will be able to become a better version of themselves. What we're doing here today is an exercise of all the things we can achieve if we work together. Yet, an action is worth a million words. It is time to start planting our seeds on the ground and see how the later can become true fruit trees as a result of all of our collaborations. Thank you. And now let's get down to business.
Thank you so much, Andrea Rems, for that wonderful opening keynote speech, highlighting that this issue of economic empowerment and employment certainly requires us to work across industries, to work across spaces, to achieve a world where each and every individual has the opportunity to thrive. Really appreciate you opening us with such inspiring remarks. With that, I'd like to call forward our 3 youth presenters that will share with us how they use innovation, creativity, and resilience to contribute to economic empowerment and employment in their community. Please welcome first Kudzai Makaza, founder of Foodvation Trading. Kudzai, I'm passing the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. So greetings to everyone who's watching from across the globe. My name is Kudzai Rosemary Makaza, the founder of Foodvation, which is a woman-led and youth-led solution that is into the food manufacturing sector. So basically, we are into the value addition of locally sourced, that is raw materials sourced locally in Zimbabwe, and then we value add them to foods that are of superior function or foods that are of higher nutritional value for the general population of Zimbabwe. So basically, ours is a story of heritage, innovation, and science, where during my course of study in food processing technology, I noticed a gap in the Zimbabwean food industry where people with alternatives, who needed alternatives, who had alternative diet needs, were mostly consuming imported products from around the globe instead of us utilizing indigenous foods and then processing them. So we basically worked with people in the rural areas of the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe to create a strong value chain across the board, where we were taking bananas and baobab powder to produce green banana flour. We also produced, coming up with an instant banana porridge, which is meant for feeding children that are suffering from malnutrition in Harare and Zimbabwe, and as well as a high vitamin C baobab juice. And so we have seen ourselves starting off working with only 10 smallholder farmers from the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe. And now we work with a total of 250 farmers, which we have gained traction of in the last 3 years. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kudzai, for those wonderful remarks. I so appreciate you sharing a little bit about your own change-making journey, about the ways in which you discovered this gap in your community and found ways to create a reality that does not yet exist. A theme that I particularly resonate with is this idea of working with communities rather than for communities, something that I've heard throughout today's festival and something that I'm sure will continue to surface as a theme throughout the festival's time. Thank you very much, Kudzai. Now for the next presentation, I'm thrilled to welcome Lemnek Tiller, CEO of Wayuda. Lemnek, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here talking to you about the social entrepreneurship that I've been leading and I co-founded since 2016 called Wayuda, which has as a social objective the improvement of the quality of life of vulnerable communities here in my country, Colombia. So since I am descendant of the Wayu indigenous people, with a team of change makers, we are motivated about creating a social positive impact in these communities that has been marked and harmed by corruption and climate change. Negative factors such as the global governmental oblivion, lack of access to drinking water, and even deaths in children due to malnutrition. And we've worked tirelessly to improve their life quality conditions. So we want to give them equity and equality. Our cornerstone starts with 3 prototypes of automated solar pumping systems, which provide each of these prototypes with about 15,000 liters of drinking water per day. So now we have continuous and safe access to drinking water. We are working on secure food and projects derive in the technification of the manufacturing handicraft processes. So we think that the way that we can go to this indigenous community in a right way is to empower the inhabitants of every community to be the main character of their own stories. So we've experienced that every project has a timely viability with this process. So to 2025, we have as a goal to have 10 self-sustainable communities with our 4-module project. The first one based on the safe and continuous access to water. The second one is assuring produce production, and the next education is crucial. So we educate to prepare them for current global issues. And finally, we are promoting handicraft manufacturing that will ensure they have a source of income, and this will provide them with autonomy and the basis to make plans to change their realities. I deeply appreciate this opportunity to expose to the world this beautiful and inspiring community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lemnek. I completely agreed, appreciating your leadership on Wayuda. What an empowering call to action to have local communities be the main characters of their own story. This theme of proximity and recognizing individuals as experts of their own experience is certainly critical in this conversation about innovation. I want to take a moment before we move on to our last speaker to highlight some questions that are surfacing in the Zoom space. We see questions around how we are able to engage young people who may not have access to online facilities. How can we reach a larger number of underprivileged learners with offline engagements to make a more inclusive future? And other folks were raising the importance of informal education and lifelong education. I also wanted to take a moment to highlight our Youth Lead correspondent for this session. Feel free to follow along with Brighton as they share their thoughts during this session today. And as a reminder, feel free to tag us at UN Youth Envoy or use the hashtag Youth Lead in order to be surfaced and also to participate in the conversations we're having online. Now for our last presenters for the solution session, we are so thrilled to have Samuel Kellerhals, a co-founder of Elpis Solar, to share about their solutions in this thematic area. Over to you, Samuel.
Hi, Dustin. Thanks very much. I'm really thrilled to be here today. My name is Samuel Kellerhals, and I'm the co-founder at Elpis Solar. So imagine leaving behind everything you've ever known and being left with only one way to contact your family, your friends, and just one way to transfer money, access the internet. Suddenly what just seemed like a phone, an item which we often take for granted has become a lifeline. And it was really this thought that led us to start LPs, which means hope, and is a social enterprise that enables us access to essential services in refugee camps around the world using solar power. At the very beginning, we started by developing a solar-powered phone charging station, which we deployed across a lot of different refugee camps in Greece, on the mainland, and also on the islands, exactly to help people get back in touch with their loved ones and help them plan their journey ahead. But luckily, as time passed, a lot of the camps in Greece slowly improved their conditions. They started becoming more electrified. So we still saw that there were still issues which we could address. There was still a massive digital divide in the camps, meaning that, even with a charged phone, access to the internet was still prohibitively too expensive for a lot of the camp residents. So as a result, we thought, what could we do about this? As students, what could we do to sort of use the learning from the classroom and actually bring it out into a solution? So we developed a solar-powered offline content server to help make available entire copies of Wikipedia and other educational content, such as Khan Academy, to camp residents through a free Wi-Fi connection using a Raspberry Pi, which is basically a low-cost computer which you can buy off the shelf. And all of this was possible due to the help of an amazing team of young students who wanted to also contribute and make a difference. Today, we've worked in Rwanda. We've deployed not only mobile phone charging stations, but also solar-powered water filtration stations in Rwanda's biggest refugee camp, Mahama Camp. And we have also, for the first time, piloted a micro-entrepreneurial model where we enable residents to not only use our services, but actually to provide those services within their own communities. So we do this by enabling residents to run their own mobile phone charging business, for example. And in the future, we really envision a world where today's 940 million people without access to electricity and more than 700 million without access to an improved water source is going to be a thing of the past. So that's why over the next 5 years, our aim is really to greatly expand our operations across refugee camps, across rural communities as well, all around the world, with a specific focus on East Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. And yeah, I'd really like to invite you to join us on this journey. So today, we also want to announce that we have up to 10 solar systems that we'd like to donate to places in need. So yeah, please feel free to help us by sharing with your networks and partners so that we can bring hope to where it is needed most. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Samuel, for a high-level overview of Altus Solar. Thank you for the work that you are leading and for sharing ways in which your organization is closing really critical gaps and barriers to quality education and pathways to employment. Exciting to hear how this innovation is scaling, and appreciate that final call to action. We've now heard from young people, heard from these young solution makers, and I'm curious to hear the reflections and thoughts of the experts in this room for this session and what they thought about these youth-led solutions. And for that, I am excited to pass the virtual floor over to Sobel Aziznam, founder and executive director of the Social Change Factory and GenU Global Leadership Council member. Sobel will be facilitating the dialogue and the reflections on these solutions. Sobel, I'll pass the floor over to you now.
Thank you very much, Dustin. This has been a great start of a session with those amazing message and experience sharing by champions all over the world. My name is Sobel Aziznam, and I'm the founder and executive director of a youth-led organization called Social Change Factory, and lucky to be a Generation Unlimited Global Leadership Council member. And I'm pleased to lead you on a very exciting discussion now, so that we can go deeper into some of the innovations and solutions we just heard about, as well as discuss also the interaction between the SDGs implementation, the youth employment, economic empowerment, and entrepreneurship. And all of this, of course, linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still affecting us. So before jumping into the conversation, let me introduce our guest today. First, we have on board with us Jennifer Brooks, Director of Global Partnership at Microsoft Philanthropies. We have Anna Sahatia, a Youth Engagement Lead and Youth Engagement Team in the Youth Engagement Team at Generation Unlimited. We have Mida Madhu Nahir, a Technical Specialist at Solution for Youth Employment. and Drew Gardiner, Youth Employment Specialist at Decent Jobs for You. So as you can hear it, we have great experts to talk about economic empowerment, to talk about youth, and to talk about future of youth. We also have our 4 champions, Andrea, Kudzai, Lemnek, and Samuel, that will also contribute to the conversation and join our speakers. So without further ado, I would love to kickstart this conversation hearing from you, Jennifer. Jennifer Brooks, again, is the Director of Global Partnership at Microsoft Philanthropy. So Jennifer, we heard about 3 diverse set of youth-led innovations that are bringing about positive change in their communities in terms of refugees, in terms of equality, in terms of climate, beyond, and moreover, there are hundreds of young people joining us live who also have the drive and the ideas to bring about transformational change. What are some of the reflections you would like to share with the young innovators here today on how they can continue to develop their work and use technology to do so?
Thank you so well, and thank
Jennifer,
you, Justin. Thank you. Thank you to the organizers and ILO, especially for having extended this opportunity to participate in really such an inspiring and eye-opening session. First, I would like to start by saying that if the world would be led by these amazing women and young leaders that we have here today, I'm sure we would reach the SDGs in 5 years and not the 9 we need to wait, right? Hopefully. So really very inspired by each one of you. And most importantly, you bring hope and you bring light in a very daring moment in our humanitarian space and in our climate challenges that we have at this point. So the one big question I have for all of you presenters and young leaders here that I was looking at and thinking through your presentation is, how do we ensure digital equity is ingrained in your endeavors as you continue to grow, right? How do we ensure that digital transformation that you also need to go through to be able to grow and scale? And first, twofold, right? For your organizations per se, ensuring that you have the support you need, that you have the capacity building that your team needs, from digital skills to digital marketing to advanced data management. And just to give you a few examples, right? While at the same time, you're providing the digital skills for your own beneficiaries from your own organizations. And at Microsoft, through our mission to empower everyone to achieve more, we make available these trainings, of course. And I would be honored, right, to be able to ensure that you and other young people here joining the conversation as well can take some basic digital skills training, an hour of code to start understanding that language of creativity and innovation that is part of our reality every day now. And then ensure we have that digital inclusion that enables your organization and your beneficiaries for their future livelihoods, right? So in the end, how do we ensure that participation in the digital economy that we're living through now? I remain, of course, at your disposal to guide you and access those opportunities. But I also wanted to make a comment specifically here to Samuel, to Lemnek, and to Kudzai, because as first, I will start with LPs, right? I'm a daughter of a refugee, and I firmly believe, we have 2 tremendous crises right now in the world. One is the climate crisis, and the second one is the humanitarian crisis. And as you, through LPs, Samuel, brings source of livelihoods to refugees, and while you ingrain this connectivity opportunity, especially also in camps, how do we ensure that these refugees have time to access digital skills, right? Maybe when they're charging the phone, and I was looking at your endeavor and really I think there is an opportunity to have a conversation. We have an initiative called Connected Education Program with UNHCR in Kakum and Kenya. And as you know, through COVID, accessing learning centers to achieve those digital skills have been a tremendous challenge. So I hope we can talk a little bit further on how we can ensure your initiative is also available in other camps with partners as that are interested in including these opportunities in the camps. I've met with Lemnek before from Wayuda, and you know, there was a long conversation some time ago on having office in Wayu. There is an office in Quechua as well, and we truly believe that no one can be left behind, nor indigenous communities can be left behind in the opportunity to access digital inclusion and livelihood. So, of course, you're focused on a basic humanitarian need, which is water, but I hope we can look at that digital inclusion opportunities for indigenous communities through the leadership that you have. And my last comment goes to a precious woman like Kudzai, really an empowered innovator, a nurturer. Like women, we try to nurture people and look at those health opportunities. And same question for you. How do we ensure that rural communities also have the digital skills? And also your organization, how can we help you grow and scale? All this to say, in the end, that displaced people, indigenous communities, women in rural communities, all should be included in a digital economy. The impressive creativity and innovation that you have brought here to the conversation, and your path ahead as entrepreneurs really covers basic human rights, food and water. And we know that connectivity clearly now through COVID has become a human right that ensures everybody's participation in a digital economy. So lastly, knowing we have 9 years to achieve SDGs, knowing this can only be fulfilled through gender parity, through digital education, and through connectivity, I challenge all of us to have a sense of urgency, a real true sense of urgency to ensure that every young person, especially young women, rural communities and indigenous communities are empowered to participate in digital livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for your words and also your appreciation on the amazing sessions that are leading by the young people around the table today. You mentioned, I mean, what is today the motto? Leave no one behind, and that's actually exactly what those young entrepreneurs and innovators are trying to do. And I want to give the floor to Samuel, actually, that you know the work and interventions to respond and tell us, Samuel, what reflects on what Jennifer has said right now, according to what you do and what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great points made. I think there are a few things for sure I can add. I mean, to how we can actually cultivate this drive to bring about, transformational change in this world. Maybe let me start by just saying this. So if you have taken this time out of your day already and, dedicated it to spending an hour with other young people, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who all have a desire to make a change in this world, then I would say you are already bringing forth transformational change. So, often the most difficult thing is actually, or at least it was for me, to get started. So if you have that drive, feel free to just tap into it and don't be afraid to share your ideas with others and ask for help. Because really the truth is that today we face enormous challenges, as has already been mentioned, ranging from climate change to a global pandemic, a refugee crisis, and the list goes on. And we simply cannot do this alone. And in our case, we couldn't have done what we did were it not for, the help of a diverse group of students from all sorts of backgrounds, from anthropology, political sciences to informatics. So, today technology really plays an increasingly important role also in how we think about and how we design solutions. And in particular, what opened my eyes to the power of technology was using code to transform ideas into reality. And given all the stigma around coding, actually anyone can pick up programming regardless of their academic background. And of course, anyone can have a great idea. So what changes is that with code, you're now able to translate this idea into something that others can use, something the world can benefit from. And you can do that from where you are sitting right now. Imagine that. And the beauty of this is that you now have a canvas for your ideas and a way for them to potentially reach millions of people. Even if it's just people in your community, it doesn't really matter. So I really encourage you to make use of all the amazing and often free online courses and resources to equip yourself with the technologies to make your ideas a reality.
Thanks a lot, Samuel. Thanks a lot. And from what you say, I get two important things actually, is that technology is the solution. There is solution through technology to fix many issues, but also collaboration is a vehicle to make that those solutions can reach people, working with partners, working together, building new kind of partnership. And actually, this is also one of the SDGs. From there, I want now to give the floor to Anna Sahakia. Anna is a youth engagement lead at Generation Unlimited. Generation Unlimited is actually a global partnership for young people. It's dedicated to equipping young people with the skills they need to succeed in the present and in the future. And doing so, Anna, GenU support many young innovators worldwide, actually including myself as a GenU lead in Senegal. Anna, what are your reflections and what skills do you think will be pivotal for young people to continue their work, especially marginalized young people?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sobel, for the question. First and foremost, can you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. All right, so thank you, Sobel, for the question. And first of all, may I applaud all of the innovations presented here today. As the other speaker also spoke, I'm also an ex-refugee from Kosovo myself, and seeing initiatives that target the humanitarian crisis and all of the crises that youth face with such creativity is truly inspiring. So it's really an honor to be sharing this platform with so many talented young people. So, the question that you posed is a really important question to be discussing right now. Marginalized young people in all their diversity have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And I heard that is resonating with everyone in this call. Over the past year, millions of young people have missed out on developing the skills that will enable them to get a good job, start a business, and engage in their community. Even as governments and teachers around the world have shifted to online formats, estimates suggest that in today's world, 2.2 billion, or 2/3 of children and young people aged 25 or less, do not have internet access. For so many young people, a world of unrealized potential and foregone opportunities is their unfortunately current reality. This digital divide is particularly hard felt among marginalized young people, including those that live in rural areas and especially girls. So in answering the question around what skills are pivotal to the future of work, I say that the future demands a broad variety of skills that match new civic and professional opportunities. Even Samuel mentioned quite a few of the access to opportunities that young people have in MOOCs, in courses, and so on. But just to say that according to the World Economic Forum, the top skills for 2025 are critical thinking, analytical thinking, innovation, problem solving, creativity, leadership, resilience, communication, digital literacy. So unsurprisingly, 8 out of those 10 top job skills of tomorrow are deeply human skills. And these are the kinds of skills uniquely human skills that we need to cultivate. Developing and enhancing skills and capabilities through innovative digital skilling, learning, and meaningful work will be the key drivers of economic success, of individual well-being, and societal cohesion. So turning back to the current reality, for those young people that work within the informal economy, particularly young subsistence entrepreneurs, they were immediately impacted by COVID-19. As lockdowns prevailed, many lost their income, as supply chains and markets were and continue to be disrupted. But as Andrea in the beginning of the session reminded us, young people have a tendency to take matters in their own hands. And we've seen this time and again at Generation Unlimited too, that despite the challenges over the past year or so, young people have proven to be resilient and persistent in realizing their goals and meeting the needs of their communities. And our role as GenU and as stakeholders within this space is to equip them with the skills and offer them the tools and support they need in order to lead. Just as an example, in India, where young people have been facing the brunt of devastating second wave of COVID-19, Young Warriors is a national movement of young people that is leading civic action in their communities. Supported by Yuva, Generation Unlimited of India, young people are taking action in their local communities by the millions, distributing face masks, tackling fake news, providing peer-to-peer mental health services, and so on. Similarly, young people are building youth-led solutions to community problems through the Youth Challenge, where over 15 million young people have been engaged. Young people are changing the socioeconomic discourse around climate by joining the ranks of green entrepreneurs. They're also leading the way in establishing the GenU partnership on the ground, and Sobel himself is an inspiring example of this. So as a public-private youth partnership at Generation Unlimited, we know that young people viscerally understand the challenges that they face, and they have the ambition to create relevant solutions. To this end, GenU strongly is recommitting in 2021 to cement the roles of young people as change makers, as co-creators, as innovators. We've woven them into the very fabric of GenU. And we look forward to working with you all and being held accountable to these commitments. To the young people in this call, I say, please have the courage and audacity to come to us and hold us accountable to this commitment. I'm confident that young people will successfully lead GenU and the global youth agenda. That's why I'm optimistic about the future. I believe the future is full of responsibility and opportunity for young people. So I would just say at the end of this, together, I think we should increase the urgency and enhance the speed at which we drive impact for social change so we can achieve the SDGs at a record time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for these positive feelings that you're sharing. And someone just right in the discussion that every young people around this conversation is a warrior. And yes, they are all, we are all. And yes, there is more and more approach that put us in the center on the table. And Ernest in the previous conversation said that young people doesn't want to figure in list and in table just for representation. They want to be considered as competent, as able to drive and to lead change. And this is what they currently do. And Lemnek is one of the young champions that are doing change and not just contributing to conversations. And Lemnek, actually, I would give you the floor to reflect on what Anna just said about the vision of Generation Unlimited to give skills to young people, all young people, wherever they are.
Thank you, Sobel. Thank you, Hannah. Well, I think to engage the community is very important. And we have as a mentality that inspire and maintain a human bond with the communities is a big challenge to face. So we validate their culture and customs transparency. So introduce technology in a way that acknowledge their traditions and cultural heritage based on research and thus ensure a friendly transition and acceptance by the community is very important. We have a very curious case with the Wayuu indigenous communities, and it's that the women of the communities dream where the water is, and the men of the communities start digging the deep wells in the middle of the desert when easily can be reached about 43 degrees Celsius at noon. And we, as a social entrepreneurs, we mix the ancestral knowledges and the techniques and technologies from nowadays to those ancestral knowledges in kind of a social fabric. Well, where we can reach that self-sustainability for those communities. And that is, I think, to reach the community self-sustainability by a community engagement is very important for this the global goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much to you, Lemnek, and congratulations for the work you do with your foundation, Wayuda. I will now turn to Mida. Mida, hi. Mida Madu Nahir, technical specialist at Solution for Youth Employment. Mida, you are a young person yourself. So you know that young people often get branded for complaining about things, but doing nothing about it, which is definitely not true. Huh? Let's be clear. And we have seen with examples from young innovators from all over the world that this is untrue, that they do way more than what people pretend they do. So I would love to hear your reflection on the ideas shared today, and what role do you think intergenerational cooperation can play for youth entrepreneurship and youth economic empowerment? So Mida, over to you.
Thank you for that question, Sobel. I think that's a very important point to address and a very good question. As a millennial myself, I have been at the receiving end of similar comments, and I don't think it's true at all. The truth is that young entrepreneurs and young people entering the labor market today, they face vastly different challenges than their predecessors. If you look at the last 2 decades, the labor market has drastically changed, and that has engendered fairly new challenges. Millennials and young people face a far more volatile job market with a lot more uncertainty. We don't have to look far. Research on post-pandemic employment outcomes highlights how young people as a demographic have experienced the most job losses and are disproportionately affected than their older counterparts. I believe intergenerational cooperation can play a big role in helping young innovators, entrepreneurs, and job seekers get ahead of these obstacles. Through a more equal access to tools for upskilling, mentorship, and guidance, I think young people can benefit from the wealth of experience that their more seasoned job market veterans have to offer. This is where organizations like the one that I'm part of, the Solutions for Youth Employment, can play a catalyzing role. We're a multi-stakeholder coalition that aims to provide leadership and resources for catalytic action to increase the number of young people engaged in productive work. It's a global program and operates as a unit of the World Bank Group. And our primary focus is delivering practical and evidence-based solutions to some of the most impending challenges faced by young people in gaining productive employment opportunities. We do host a network of 35 private companies, 44 high potential innovative youth employment projects, which form a part of our impact portfolio. And this is led by our NGO partners. What really makes us unique is that we focus on identifying practical hands-on solutions. And to that extent, we curate innovations through our impact portfolio partners, which actually acts as a live learning laboratory for us. Even after the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic was over, we were quickly able to identify some innovative adaptations that our partners made in their program and even in their delivery models to deal with some pressing challenges. Our driving philosophy for most of our projects is that the youth are not just recipients of innovation, but they're also an integral part of designing youth employment programs for not only the S4YE group, but also the World Bank. And we strongly believe that for intergenerational cooperation to be effective, it is important that youth voices play an integral part in the design process of any youth employment program. This has to be complemented by including industry experts, experienced entrepreneurs, and private sector players, along with stakeholders from multiple disciplines and industries. We do believe that a more inclusive process would ensure a more successful workforce.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Medha. And actually, what is powerful on what you said, I think it's really this willing now of that we can fill within institutions to build bridges, to build new kind of bridges, to acknowledge that traditional cooperation is not enough, and that young people have to be part of every path of the way, and start with in the advisory board or the governance boards. And this is, I think, what should inspire a lot of institutions today. I would from there give the floor to Kudzai from Foodovation, who mentioned proudly earlier that she's a young woman leading. And this is also a powerful statement in a place where, in a global world where there is today two groups that are fighting for their rights, women and young people. And being both, fighting for order is a proof that in a side, women take lead on what is needed and young people take lead of what is needed. So Kudzai, as both, I give you the floor. If you could come back and reflect of what Medha just shared with us, that would be wonderful. Kudzai, over to you.
Thank you very much. So definitely the statement is not true, because young people, and also being young and female, are not people who complain and do nothing about it. I think, first of all, the statement comes from the fact that there is no effort between intergenerations or different generations to speak the same language or to understand the different languages that they speak based on their worldviews according to the different times that they grew up. So, for example, I often see that the older generation is more inclined to solutions that they call realistic, and the younger generation is inclined to solutions that are more technical oriented or that bring ease of doing things as we go. And there's nothing wrong with bringing ease as we progress in life. I mean, what would humans be if we weren't progressive in terms of ease of doing things, ease of access to information, ease of communication, and etc. So, for example, in our business, when we were looking to start to process bananas into an instant porridge as well as into flour, we faced a lot of resistance because people are used to either eating the banana as the fruit and or cooking it there and then. There was no thinking that there could be post-harvest losses that could be preserved, and we could further process the bananas into a product. And so, I would like to especially mention at this particular point, one of the organizations, which is the ILO in Zimbabwe, with support from the Swedish government, that supported us through the Green Enterprise competition in enabling our solution to ensuring that we go forward with the idea. In ensuring that we go forward with the idea. So those are just the intergenerational languages that I was speaking to, where different generations are able to communicate with each other and come up with a solution despite their different worldviews based on how they grew up. Yeah, basically that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kudzai. You were mentioning ILO, and actually this is also where we're going by giving the floor now to Drew Gardiner, Youth Employment Specialist at Decent Jobs for Youth. for the International Labour Organization. Drew, even before the onset of the COVID-19, which actually continued to disturb and affect young people worldwide, we were seeing high levels of youth unemployment all over the world. With that in mind, and after hearing from young innovators and champions today, what are your reflections of the role of youth innovation and creativity in building back better to COVID-19?
Yeah, great to be here, Sobel, and thanks for inviting ILO to give thoughts and participate in this important event. And very happy to be here with all of these young change makers. Sobel, last week I turned 40, so I'm officially no longer in any jurisdiction in any country a young person, but I still work and I'm passionate about the issues, and that's why I was thrilled to listen to and learn about the great initiatives from Samia, Lemnek, and Kutsa. And nice to meet the three of you. Congratulations. You're impressive, you're innovative, you're energetic, you're risk takers, which is coming from somebody that's been a civil servant and worked in international organizations pretty much all my life. I find it just unbelievable, the young entrepreneurs and what you are capable of. So congratulations. I heard a lot about humanitarian work, about work with refugees and displaced persons. It's also an area that I'm really passionate about. Sobel, when I was young, I spent 2 years in a refugee camp in northern Zambia, working with Congolese refugees on sport and play programs. And that's actually what was my first job experience of my life, and it was the formative one. And that's why I remain really passionate about the issues. Despite scaring a lot of the young kids in the camp, because it was the first white person they saw and they thought I was a ghost. But that's another issue and funny story. Okay, I have some pieces of maybe advice or thoughts or so for our young entrepreneurs and also the participants. The ILO is the oldest UN agency. We were started in 1919. We turned 100 2 years ago. In 2019, we had a big celebration, and the theme for the celebration was the future of work. Very fitting for today as well. And we passed a declaration in our International Labor Conference called the Centenary Declaration, which says that the future of work is and will remain to be young people. And you three entrepreneurs are really examples of that. But you won't always be in the position that you're in now. We expect that your businesses are going to grow even larger. Maybe you're going to move to other activities using your great talents and energies, but you're also the employers of tomorrow, and you're the solutions to the Youth Employment Challenge. You ask me if COVID crisis has disproportionately affected young people, for sure. So youth unemployment has increased by 9% in 2020 during the peak of COVID, where for adults, it's only increased by almost 3.9%. So for young women, it's more. So we are disproportionately affected, but the solution is for your businesses to grow and for you to become the employers of tomorrow. And given this is the case, my advice, and I think it would also be my organization's advice, is that we also work together, that it's not just about creating jobs, but it's about creating decent jobs. And that's really the slogan for the ILO. There's big challenges. I concentrate my work on youth employment in Africa. 97% of young people who work in Africa are in the informal sector. Everybody, all young people are in the informal sector, okay? Now, out of those people, out of those people that did manage to get jobs, many of them remain poor. So it's 39% of young people that work in Africa are still poor. They're in what we call working poverty, right? So they're it's $1 or $2 a day that these young people are making. So yeah, we talk about all these solutions and innovation. I think it's just important, like it's a reality check, Sobel, really for us all, that it's low quality jobs. The challenge is just so massive. And I need to put a bit that that pessimistic hat on a bit now and then, because I think it's important for us to help to build back better. What can we do? Just a few thoughts maybe I mentioned that you're the employers of tomorrow. I just want learn about what a good quality job is and means, what it means and what the implications are. Jobs that are decent, have social protection, respect, other decent work principles like minimum wage, like balancing work and family life, about flexibility. We're all talking about what digital jobs can do for us these days. Digital jobs are not a reality for it's about turning the promise into the reality. We talk about Kenya, maybe Ghana a bit, South Africa being the engines for digital economic growth in Africa. We're talking about a couple of 100,000 jobs in digital sectors for young people. It's really small. But the potential is huge. So we need to make sure that these jobs are being created are good jobs and not ones that discriminate and that are precarious and that somehow are taking advantage of the situation. So digital, I think, acceleration can also be to the detriment. No, it can also accelerate inequalities, and we need to be, I think, especially conscious of that. ILO is a social justice organization. So I think importantly for the young entrepreneurs, it's about, understanding and tying your endeavors into, national economic growth priorities and development priorities of your country. And that's much also easier said than done, because the challenges are really at the macroeconomic level. It's not these small and medium-sized enterprises and entrepreneurs that are not doing it right. It's really the economy in the country, at the regional level, but also the global level, which needs to change. And that's what we mean when we talk about social justice. It's about fair and equal economic growth, and that distributes benefits from a well-functioning economy that are inclusive and that are equal. And so we need to push also that with our partners in the country and employers and workers organizations. So I'm going to leave it on that. I just wanted to mention about one more piece of maybe literature for the participants and the listeners, that we launched today on International Youth Day a new flagship report, which is called Towards Decent Work for Young Refugees on Digital Labor Platforms. Go check it out on our website. It gives some super powerful insights into what it means for refugees and other displaced populations to work in digital labor platforms. And again, it's about turning the promise into reality there. I'm keen with meeting up with all these entrepreneurs once again and working on all these issues together. And I hope ILO and also the global initiatives on decent jobs for youth can play its part there. So thanks for giving me the microphone, Soba. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much to you, Drew, for these comments and very interesting insight that you share. And I think that you have a young man just behind you that also aspire to become a champion.
That's the future of work.
A great entrepreneur. This is the future of work. So welcome on board. Thank you for your different advice. And I really keep in my mind the one talking about taking advantage of the digital acceleration to improve the skills and learning for the future of work. And I think this is something that is more and more understood by entrepreneurs, by government, but also by our youth champions, that the three of them really understand how technology and why technology can play a role to break barriers in terms of possibility of the future. And also the last one about giving back through volunteering that you mentioned also was your first job, and that's really structure and build strong conviction with you. And from there, I will give back the floor to our keynote speaker that spent also a lot of her time giving back through her solutions initiated R&D Aprende, Andrea, to reflect of what Drew just mentioned. Andrea, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sobel. Well, yeah, couldn't agree more. 100%. The future of workers is youth. We're here, we're about to enter. Some of us might already be there. And the reason is, let's reflect on this. Why did we become entrepreneurs? Well, we noticed that there was a gap, that someone was not covering it. And we need to make sure that those people who don't necessarily have the same opportunities as we did, we're gonna be able to get them. Moments, situations that are really disruptive, like the pandemic right now, like the fourth industrial revolution, are moments to sit down, lay back, reflect on the things and the ways we can change things to ensure that everybody has those same opportunities. And I think that's why entrepreneurship is so important. But as also Drew mentioned, let's keep in mind, right now we're youth, but in 10 years' time, we'll switch it again back to that role. So we'll have to reflect on saying, how can we give those who are yet to come the opportunities to also help us build a much more sustainable and better place for everyone? So that'll be my reflection. So let's make sure that we are bringing those opportunities now, but at the same time, later on, we'll have to sit back and be the ones who are listening, not necessarily speaking. Thank you.
Absolutely true, Andrea, and this is a way where we all have passed our power towards young militants and over, and I think that what you just said is very important, and I will go to my conclusions also on this world. It's we have to do now things that we will be accountant tomorrow. What is the role and the impact that young people are making in the world today? That will be the reason why we could pretend to guide the next generation of young people. And this is something very important. Andrea, thanks for your words, and again, congratulations for the amazing work that you are doing. We run late, and I'm sorry for that, but I really enjoyed this conversation. I want to thank the panelists, Jennifer, Anna, Meda, Drew. Thank you so much for your words and for your presence to that conversation, but also our stars of the day. This is your day. Thank you, Andrea, Kudzai, Lemnek, and Samuel, and I wish you the best, and we wish you all the best for what you are doing, where you are doing it in the world. And I will just close this conversation by saying this. I think we as young people are more and more heard, and I think we need now to fight together, not only to be served, but to be trusted to lead, and be able to lead properly and to co-lead where we are the best. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to give back the floor to our MC of the day, Dustin. Dustin, over to you for the closing.
Thank you so much, Sobel, and thank you for facilitating. What a dynamic, engaging, really inspiring discussion that brought together so many themes that we explored in day one of the Youth Lead Innovation Festival. Once again, all the links and resources that were shared and referenced by speakers will be shared on @UN Youth Envoy social media platforms. And if you can believe it, we are winding down the first day of the first ever Youth Lead Innovation Festival. Thank you for contributing. Thank you to everyone from the keynote speakers to the young presenters, to our experts and multi-stakeholders multi-stakeholder partners for participating in this nourishing festival celebrating the work of young innovators. To close, I want to share that I'm walking away with a sense of hope, a sense of light, a sense of clarity that our ability to build a better world starts by having an opportunity to imagine a different reality, a different world. And through these innovations, we see young people who are pushing towards a world that does not yet exist. And I am excited by the prospect of what the world will look like if we fueled it with the same amount of joy and imagination as so many of our young speakers have brought with us today. Don't forget to join us tomorrow at the second day for Youth Lead Innovation Festival. Be sure to check out the spotlight sessions because it certainly does not end here. And if you are on TikTok, we wanted to flag that this is a way that you can share how you are implementing innovative ideas to help us achieve a better world. Go ahead and check out our TikTok at UN Youth Envoy and stitch your video there. Once again, thank you for joining us. We wish you all the best. Take care, stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you at day 2 of the Youth Lead Innovation Festival.